Chapter 904. It's you? So that is the case. That's right, as expected, you can't achieve longevity. Zhongshou, you must treat her well. She is also a pitiful person. Jingyin stopped and couldn't help but open her eyes wide. She was totally confused. She looked closely at Lin Xuanchuang, thinking to herself that she didn't know this person, so why did she seem so familiar with her? Zhongshou was also at a loss. He understood something. As expected, Jingyin was most probably a reincarnated expert. Just thinking about it, how could a normal person use prophecy power to interfere with cause and effect, and then block all knowledge? He didn't feel anything weird. Instead, he was laughing to himself. This was called a dragon entering shallow water and a tiger entering flatland. To be able to shock Lin Xuanchuang, Jingyi in the last life was definitely an amazing person. However, now she was being bullied by Zhongshou. After Lin Xuanchuang said this, she didn't bother to explain anything to Zhongshou and the others. She directly stepped into the boat. Zhongshou shook his head, bringing the two of them and a few protector beasts into the Aurora boat. They used the celestial treasure to flash out of this world and into the Xiwang Ocean. At the start, Hanshi was the one controlling the movement in the void. Hanshi's source was light, so when it controlled the boat, it was even a little faster than Zhongshou. However, in just half an hour, Lin Xuanchuang felt that the boat was too slow. She used her end realm intent to forcefully control the boat. As expected, the Aurora boat's speed instantly increased by a full 10 times. Thus, in just one day, he had traversed more than 10 worlds. However, this celestial treasure gave out creaking sounds all around. It was obvious that it was pushed to the limit. Its current speed far exceeded what it could carry. This made Zhongshou wonder if this flying boat would break apart in the next moment. However, he didn't really care. He just wanted to rush to the 9 extreme death prison as soon as possible. After flying for 2 days, Lin Xuanchuang felt bored again. First, he wandered around Zhongshou's Juntian immortal abode. In the end, he simply brought up Zhongshou in front of him, saying that although Zhongshou had become his disciple, he had never taught him a single day. As a teacher, he felt guilty. Now that he had the time, he could do what a teacher should do. Zhongshou didn't mind. After all, Lin Xuanchuang was end realm, and to be able to get her guidance was something that others couldn't get. She only noticed that her master might have been trapped in that world for too long and hadn't spoken to anyone for thousands of years. At this moment, however, she was very talkative, like a talkative little girl. However, his master's voice was really nice to listen to. It was like celestial music in an empty valley. Every day, she would talk about the various problems that Zhongshou might face, as well as the heaven and earth Taos that she had dabbled in. Zhongshou didn't feel annoyed when he heard it. Instead, he enjoyed it and enjoyed it. He knew that this was a rare opportunity, so he summoned his few protector beasts, as well as Lu Wubing and Jingyin to listen at the side. Although Lin Xuanchuang was teaching him, what she said was also really important to his god beasts and spiritual pets, and it was really beneficial. Not to mention Lu Wubing and Jingyin. Who knows whether or not it was an illusion. But Zhongshou could see that when the 3 of them and the few spiritual pets listened solemnly with respectful gazes, their expressions were filled with respect. Lin Xuanchuang's eyes were filled with delight. Why did he feel that his true master was so unreliable? Zhongshou shook his head and forced himself not to think about it. No matter what, the Tao that Lin Xuanchuang preached every day was the real deal. Although his master dragon Shadow loved him a lot, he didn't care about him at all. However, in the past few years, she was planning to break through before her lifespan ended. After breaking through to End Realm, she went into secluded meditation to consolidate and didn't have much time to teach him. It was still okay before the Celestial Realm. After all, he had the experience of the last life to follow. Song Xingdao had a vast amount of scriptures to study. However, after entering the Celestial Realm, it was a scripture that he hadn't reached when he was Tanxiu in the virtual world. At this moment, no matter how many scriptures Song Xingdao had, he needed time to understand, analyze, and comprehend them. To be able to obtain Lin Xuanchuang's teachings, It saved him a lot of trouble. At this moment, he wasn't the only one who benefited. His few spiritual pets were all fine. Their energy meridians and spiritual sense were much more stable. Jingyi's cultivation was low, and she sat cross-legged with her eyes closed. Who knows whether or not she understood? Lu Wubbing was focused, his gaze focused, and he wasn't willing to reveal a single word. On the 15th day, Lin Xuanchuang sent Lu Wubbing and Jingyin away along with Zhongshou's few spiritual pets. She left only Zhongshou behind. Although we are master and disciple in name, we aren't master and disciple. I am ashamed to say that after dozens of days, I still can't see through your foundations. I only feel that it is really unstable and hard to predict. It seems to include everything, but it isn't. Zhongshou, are you willing to let me see what your foundations are after stepping into Celestial Realm? Zhongshou smiled. In front of Lin Xuanchuang, he didn't hide anything. With a thought, a black hole and a white ball of light appear behind his head. Like a whirlpool, it slowly spun. It caused the light in the room to change and split into black and white. Lin Xuanchuang looked closely, and her expression changed. She took in a deep, cold breath. Is this Zhongshou's Dharma? Zhongshou nodded his head. Then, what appeared was his sole, true image. It also stood behind. It was the size of a human. Its two hands each held a black and white hole. Below it was a 9-leaf, 7-colored lotus platform. At the center of his brows was an incomplete Dao seal. Dao? This is your foundations, no wonder. Lin Xuanchuang's brow rose up, and then she said in deep thought, 3,000 Daos, Dao, of theories. No wonder your foundations are so thick and so tough to predict. It goes straight to the source of heaven and earth. If one day you reach End Realm, your path to True Realm will be much easier than Shizi's. Before I transcended the tribulation, I've seen countless heroes, but there are only 3 to 5 people who have the same talent as you. But what's up with this lotus platform under your true form? A few years ago, the Buddhist faction sent out a Buddhist decree to announce to the world that they wanted to make me the unlimited beginning and end Buddha. Zhongshou explained casually. A few days ago, when I was going through the Celestial Realm tribulation, I had no choice but to use the wish power of the Buddhist faction. At that time, I formed such a lotus platform. Who knows if it is a blessing or a curse? There was no need to say much about the details. Lin Xuanchuang wouldn't care about all this. Unlimited beginning and end? Unlimited light, beginning and end? So that is the case. Your Dharma is really amazing and really magical. Who knows how you thought of it? You should be the only one in the world today. No wonder the Buddhist faction is like that. They want to create paradise, so they definitely can't do without you. Future Buddha, what a huge move. No wonder that woman would choose to come to your side. Although her Tao is strong and indiscernible, even End Realm experts fear it. However, to take that final step, it is 100 times harder than me. Who knows whether or not the last few sentences were referring to Jingyin? Lin Xuanchuang smiled. That lotus platform is okay. You could just use it. However, in the future, when you use Buddhist power, you need to be really careful. As for your Tao foundations, I think you're walking the path of going from complicated to simple. It seems to have something to do with the star shadow that you displayed that day. Let me take a look too. Zhongshou nodded his head in deep thought. Since Lin Xuanchuang said that, then he didn't need to worry too much. The 79 stars in the Soul Ocean Void Ocean were all displayed outside. During these few days, the number of stars didn't increase, but these stars were much brighter. Using the instant space dragon pellet to craft the star Tao seed, this is created with the Taoist faction's cycle of heaven star falling technique as the foundations, a total of 79 Taos. This technique was also extremely impressive. It was enough to be listed as a 12th grade world destroying divine ability. To think that you were able to find so many instant space dragon pellets. Lin Xuanchuang's eyes flashed, and then she shook her head. However, today I really don't know how to teach you. I also don't know where to start. If I say too much, it will instead spoil your future cultivation. Just as Zhongshou was feeling disappointed, Lin Xuanchuang casually waved her hand and a pill flew over. Swallow this. The pill was pink and gave off a fishy smell. The spiritual light was really dark. Zongsho looked on suspiciously. This pill looked really special. However, where did it come from? After Lin Xuanchuang revived, she didn't have anything on her. No matter how he looked at it, the origin of this pill was really suspicious. Lin Xuanchuang seemed to have seen through his thoughts and scoffed coldly. How can you know about the abilities of the Saint Realm? Which one of them doesn't know how to open up space? Do you really think that all the items I brought with me were destroyed? I just hid them. This is what I have accumulated over many years. Shizi personally crafted it, and its value is far above that of the Heaven Essence Life Creation Pill. If it weren't for the fact that this disciple of yours is so obedient and has saved Aijia's life, I wouldn't have taken it out because I couldn't bear to see you throw your life away. Not only can this pill greatly increase your cultivation, but it will also help you when you enter the 9 extreme death jail. Zongsho originally wanted to say that since she still had all her treasures, then why didn't she compensate him for his losses? When he heard the last few words about how Shizi personally being able to increase his cultivation and how he would benefit from entering the 9 extreme death jail, he was tempted. The only person half a step to true realm in all the worlds. How could the pills refined by such a person be small? Looking at Lin Xuanchuang's expression, she wasn't speaking nonsense. Moreover, what benefits would she get from lying to him? However, shortly after, Lin Xuanchuang said with a weird expression, however, this item will also activate your sky, fox bloodline, and nature, and might cause unexpected consequences. Before you use it, you need to think about it. Sky fox bloodline and nature? Zongsho frowned. Hearing her tone, he felt that something wasn't right. However, if it was just the Sky Fox bloodline, then it wasn't much. It was normal for such a spiritual medicine to have some side effects. He didn't think much about it, and just swallowed it. To be continued. Chapter 905. After the spiritual medicine dissolved in his stomach, it was like an ice fountain entering his stomach, flowing through his body and into the depths of his heart. However, all of a sudden, there wasn't anything different about his body. Zongsho didn't mind. After many pills were consumed, the medicinal effects would hide for a period of time before slowly acting up. Then, he saw Lin Xuanchuang smile, following which she formed a seal and hollered. 10,000. That voice was low, but it directly spread into Zongsho's brain. He only felt that his spirit was shaken, and he was in a trance. His consciousness also became blurry, only to hear Lin Xuanchuang's voice say coldly, "Since I am your master, then I have to teach you. Your path is special and complicated, pointing to the source of the Grand Tao, the only one in the world. Since I am unable to teach you, then I can only teach you what I learned in my life. Today, I am keeping you here alone, but I won't teach you anything." When she said that, Lin Xuanchuang formed a second seal, like a plum blossom. Tao. The Buddhist faction has the enlightenment technique, the Taoist faction has the golden pill transformation technique, the dream developing technique, all of which can allow disciples to improve quickly. My husband, Shizi, has been pursuing the Tao of equality and has great ambitions. In the early years, after he ran into a wall, he felt that if there was a difference between people, it was because of their strength, intelligence, and hard work. To make people equal, it was best if everyone had strong strength. This was why he focused on how to let normal people cultivate the martial arts and Taoist techniques. Zongsho scoffed when he heard that. If everyone cultivated the martial arts and Taoist techniques, everyone would have strong strength? Who knows what happened in the end? That's right, if it succeeded, Shizi wouldn't have died as expected. He heard Lin Xuanchuang say, "Although my husband gave up halfway, it allowed my Tsang Xingdao to have one more secret technique, combining Buddhist, Taoist, and demon faction techniques. It is called the spirit dream inducing technique. If I can use my true essence, then I can pass down the Grand Tao." The third seal was formed. Lin Xuanchuang said another rule word. The pill you consumed was also extraordinary. It was called the Xian Comprehension Pill. Shizi originally wanted to give it to his reincarnated friend. Unfortunately, he became enemies with that person. This pill, combined with the spirit dream-inducing technique, has a special effect. The fourth hand seal was accompanied by the word ritual. Then, there were 3 more seals, each of which was accompanied by a word of truth, such that Zhongsho's mind's mind. It was also like the evening drum and morning bell. He suddenly realized something and understood something, but he couldn't say it. He didn't know what it. When he said the last word, there was an explosion in Zhongsho's mind. His spiritual sense returned to his soul. Ocean. These words took shape in his mind. 10,000 Dao rules ritual Xian Fa Kong. 7 words. Zhongsho's brow rose up. He remembered that these 7 words were the secret words of their Tsang Xingdao. It was the same as the Taoist faction's 9-word true words and the Buddhist faction's Manjushri 8-law curse. In the next instance, Lin Xuanxuang reached out with her cold and tender finger and tapped on Zhongsho's brow. Zhongsho's mind that had just recovered was swept by an enormous amount of information, such that he nearly collapsed. He felt like he had entered a dream, seeing all sorts of mysteries and understanding all sorts of mysteries. So Master's cultivation technique is the source life spirit breathing technique. Mai Tsang Xingdao's grade 11 technique came from her. Master's Grand Tao is a source, the source of everything, an endless source. No wonder she dared to go through the end realm tribulation 2,000 years after becoming a saint. The source life spirit breathing technique was something that Zhongsho had seen in the technique teaching building. At the top floor, only direct disciples could see it. Zhongsho was also shocked by such a mysterious ability. However, as he couldn't be distracted, he didn't cultivate it. That was because this technique was really profound and wasn't any weaker than his black and white Dharma and foundation technique. After leaving the cloud world, he memorized this technique in his mind so that when he had time in the future, he would comprehend its mysteries. Who knew that at this moment, he would have a chance to directly grasp this grand Tao. What a spirit dream technique. Zhongshoxin was filled with joy. Almost instinctively, he frantically absorbed everything that he could see in his dream at this moment. If it was in the past, even if he was lucky enough to see it, he wouldn't be able to memorize it all. Just that vast and endless amount of information would cause Zhongsho's soul to be unable to handle it. At this moment, who knows if it was due to the effects of the Xian comprehension pill, but he didn't feel his limits at all. He was like a bottomless hole, swallowing the true meaning of the source. He also instinctively felt that this grand Tao formation would fill up the most important part of his Tao foundations. He definitely couldn't miss it. He totally forgot about himself and didn't feel anything else. Zhongsho didn't know that at this moment, the true image of the Dharma he showed outside had changed once more. Between the black and white hole, the stars changed, the grand Tao entangled, chaos opened and closed. Waves of magnificent power were born from this. It was like there was a world forming around him out of nowhere. At this moment, even Lin Xuanxuang instinctively retreated. Looking at the scenes in front of her, she was startled. This is husband's creation technique? The moment such a thought rose up, Lin Xuanxuang's eyes lost focus. She was stunned as she looked at Zhongsho. A moment later, she shook her head. No, grasping the end and origin with the Tao, with the source, naturally a world is born. However, it is really similar to husband. Thinking about it, Lin Xuanxuang's eyes became even more unfocused. She noticed that Zhongsho's form had changed once more. Ninetails appeared and danced behind him. At the center of his brows, a blood-red, mysterious spiritual pattern appeared. It made his already bewitchingly handsome face even more beautiful, making him look extremely charming. There was also a really nice smell of death that entered her nose. Lin Xuanxuang's face turned red, and her breathing became rushed. She took a few steps forward and reached out with a hand, wanting to touch Zhongsho's face. However, before she touched it, she came to her senses. All of a sudden, she was so embarrassed that she couldn't be any more embarrassed. Damned heavenly fox blood. Viciously slicing Zhongsho's face, Lin Xuanxuang was like a frightened rabbit as she flashed out of the room. When she was outside, Lin Xuanxuang's face was still flushed red. She also felt that there was something wrong with her lower body. It was actually wet. Instantly, he wished that he could dig a hole and bury himself in it. Lin Xuanxuang, you wanted to plot against others, but nearly plotted against yourself. In this world, you are probably the only one who did that. Scoffing coldly, Lin Xuanxuang rubbed her brow with a headache. It was all because her newly formed body was too weak and her injuries weren't healed. If not, why would she fall into Zhongsho's trap? If she had a true end-realm body, even if Zhongsho's nine-tailed sky fox bloodline reached the peak, it wouldn't be able to affect her. She let out a long sigh. She had almost made a huge mistake today. How could it not be because she had missed her husband for too long? If not, this end-realm spiritual sense. Just as she was feeling annoyed, her heart moved as she looked into the distance. He saw that Jingyin had a confused expression as she pushed open the door to the room and walked in. Lin Xuanxuang was instantly delighted. Her lips curled up in delight. Chapter 906. How did this happen? Jingyin's delicate and fair face was currently burning up and turning scarlet red. She really didn't dare to recall how crazy she was these 2 days. For some reason, wave after wave of pleasure struck her, such that she couldn't pull herself out of it. She couldn't suppress it and just indulged in it. Her body was filled with a sense of fullness, like she was experiencing another version of herself, experiencing the happiest thing in the world. She was being conquered and trampled on. It was as if she had turned into a slut who had done countless shameful things that were hard to talk about. Even at this moment, the pleasure had faded, but she could still feel the lust surging in her body. Luckily, during these 2 days, other people thought that she was in secluded meditation and didn't notice anything. If not, she would have just found a piece of tofu and killed herself. Primordial Buddha, unlimited beginning and end. The moment these words were chanted, Jingyin shook her head. These 2 days, for some reason, she was tempted. If the few Buddhas found out, they would most probably be furious. Thinking about it, was she actually a really lustful woman? Her cultivation had already reached the diamond realm. Recently, when she was teaching in the Yuanren world, she felt that her foundations were getting thicker and thicker. She was just one step away from becoming an arhat. Who knew that at this moment such a thing would happen? Sighing slightly, Jingyin chanted a few Sanskrit words. Instantly, a green spiritual light swept across the room. It cleaned up all the traces of her 2 nights of absurdity. Then, she sat down cross-legged and chanted the 3 Wonder Bodhi Purify mantra. However, when she chanted out one scripture after another, Jingyin was unable to calm down like before. Her mind was filled with the various things that happened during those 2 nights. She couldn't get rid of them. She couldn't help but sigh, thinking to herself that this lustful thought was her tribulation. However, where did it come from and how should she solve it? She had no idea. Her master wasn't here, and there was no one she could ask for advice. That vast habitat, main home Master Zifan's cultivation, was really high. He was really generous and had the aura of an elder. Recently, due to his teaching, he became an arhat. However, she couldn't tell this great master about such shameful things. Just as his thoughts were in a mess, he saw a spiritual light suddenly charge into the Yuanjing Palace. He didn't even greet her before he headed straight for where she was staying. It was Zhao Yanran. Jingyin only needed a glance to know who had arrived. Subconsciously, he looked around. Only then did he relax and put away his guilty conscience. When she saw Zhao Yanran's light land, her expression changed. How did you get injured so badly? Who did it? Zhao Yanran's shoulder seemed to have been hit by something heavy. His entire shoulder blade was broken and caved in inwards. The wound was a ghastly sight. The only consolation was that there wasn't much blood. It was obvious that Zhao Yanran was still able to control her injuries. It's fine. The person who injured me was killed by my sword earlier. She was obviously badly injured, but Zhao Yanran was still smiling, giving off a cold and cruel intent. As for who it was, is there need to ask? 3 Spirit Realm Peak dared to ambush and test me. Zhao Yanran. This time I finally gave them a taste of their own medicine. Also, I took revenge for the deaths of those disciples from the three factions. Jingyin kept silent. She knew that Zhao Yanran's last few words were referring to how the disciples of the Kinzo sect, Buddhist faction, and Song Xingdao, who were traveling and patrolling the Yuanren world, were killed. Since that day, when they wiped out Hong Jiuchen's forces, the Yuanren world had been peaceful for half a year. However, today, there were hidden currents surging and storms rising. Not only were the disciples of the three factions being ambushed and killed, there were also conflicts at the borders. There were more and more small-scale battles. Pretty much every day, there were many casualties. Many of the disciples of the 6 Buddhist sects had returned to the Pure Land. Jingyin didn't want to see people die. However, at this moment, it was impossible for the Buddhist faction to just back out of the Yuanren world. Are we still unable to investigate the background of these people? Zhao Yanran smiled bitterly. These people are all death warriors and none of them survived. The soul-searching technique was also useless. If they could find out, then they wouldn't have to be so troubled. However, although the Daqian celestial dynasty, Mufang, and Fuyue were slowly going up against each other. However, they couldn't prove that the killing of the Daqian celestial dynasty cultivators had something to do with them. Instead, all the clues pointed to the Judu Xianing as well as Hong Jiuchen, who should have retreated. As expected, taking in a deep breath, Jingyin shook her head. Sister Yanran, you need to be careful. Those people definitely won't let this matter rest. At this moment, they are only spirit realm, but if ruler doesn't appear, using celestial realm cultivators is something that will happen sooner or later. Looking closely at the various matters in the Yuanren world, they just wanted to see how the Daqian celestial dynasty would react. Even whether or not the head of the Daqian celestial dynasty Zhongshu was still in the Yuanren world, was he alive or dead, the intensity of their probing would also slowly increase. Such provocation, and there was no reply. Naturally, one could imagine how weak the Daqian celestial dynasty was. If this went on, sooner or later, everyone would panic. At that time, it would be the time when some people would truly act. I know about this matter. Within the cloud world, the second batch of spaceships has already rushed over. In just a few months, they will arrive. Just my Song Xingdao alone has 3,000 disciples. At that time, we will be able to solve the problem of lacking manpower. Zhao Yanran smiled. The three factions all increased their manpower, which meant that they placed a lot of importance on the Yuanren world and didn't just want to try. Luckily, Master Zifeng and Senior Brother Tai Chi, one stepped into the celestial realm and the other is at the peak of the spirit realm. However, they can go up against celestial realm experts and scare off the small ones. If not, these few months would have been even more difficult. They have done a great job. There is also the Shuro race's Chaho, who, his recent actions were really weird. It was like he was helping the Daqian celestial dynasty in the dark. It allowed Zhongshu, who was in charge of the Yuanren world, to be able to calmly reorganize the military. The moment she said this, a bitter laugh spread out from behind her. I don't dare to accept such praise from Fairy Yanran. A person walked over. It was Tai Chi. His eyes were filled with exhaustion and helplessness. At this moment, Tai Chi also feels that he is powerless. Who knows how long he can last? Those people are really scheming, so they definitely won't stop at this. However, only 3 celestial realm experts came along with the spaceship. Now, we can only hope that ruler will return soon. It is best if nothing happens to him. The moment these words were said, Jingyin's expression changed slightly. How would she not know that Hong Jiuchen, Tan Jing, and the others were in such a rush to counterattack? They definitely had obtained some news. Only Zhao Yanran was smiling brightly. Tai Chi looked at her with a weird expression and was deep in thought. Is Fairy Yanran going to advance too? It's still early. I'm just catching up to you. However, it won't be long before I take that step. Tai Chi and Jingyin exchanged glances with one another, their expressions filled with surprise. At this moment, it was not bad to be able to increase their combat strength. Zhao Yanran had grass spirit and martial arts merger not long ago. She was also someone who could go up against celestial realm experts the moment she stepped into the peak of the spirit realm. Zhao Yinran was thinking about Zhong Shou. The increase in her cultivation was also thanks to him. In other words, not only was that person unscathed, but his strength had also improved tremendously. Chapter 907. Outside the extreme light adversity crossing boat, Zhong Shou stepped in the air and stood there quietly. This was within a void realm river, but it was less than a breath's worth of travel speed away. Endless explosive spiritual energy could be seen. Countless dust particles were constantly swirling around. They burned and burned at extreme speeds, giving off shocking heat. The environment was so harsh that it was no less than Shuang Ocean. Zhong Shou's face was dark and sunken. Even before he came here, he had already heard Lu Wubbing describe this place in detail. However, now that he personally came here, he realized that the 9 Extreme Death Jail was far worse than he had expected. This place was only the outermost area of the 9 Extreme Death Jail, and he hadn't truly entered the Death Jail. Who knew what it was like in the Death Jail world? The moment he thought about how his mother had lived in such a place for 20 years, he felt ashamed. He was ashamed as a son. He also thought about his father. How did he feel during these 20 years? His heart was probably in pain, and he couldn't sleep in peace. However, he wasn't in a rush to enter. Instead, a blue light popped out and floated in front of him. It was a liquid the size of a speck of dust, but it contained shocking spiritual energy. At the start, he used 7 drops of heaven-snatching liquid. However, Zhong Shou took a little from it. However, if it was just to gather Lu Zi's soul, it was enough. The items he used to gather her soul were the few magical artifacts that Lu Zi carried with her at that time. Along with Zhong Shou using his spiritual energy, he used his spiritual sense to draw out a spiritual formation in the air. A broken soul body slowly formed in front of him. It was Lu Zi's appearance before. She was at a loss as she looked coldly at Zhong Shou. She seemed to recognize that this was the person who had killed her. Zhong Shou was too lazy to speak to him, forming another hand seal as he chanted incantations. Instantly, a giant death gate appeared in front of him. He grasped the life and death Tao, and it was really easy for him to communicate with the netherworld. However, when strands of Yin's soul power wrapped around her and grabbed her soul and pulled it into the nether gate, the nether gate was filled with despair. Tiny beads of sweat appeared on the tip of Zhong Shou's nose. It was easy to send this woman to the netherworld, but the difficult part was how to protect her and let her reincarnate safely. After all, a broken soul was much more difficult than the reincarnation of an ordinary person's soul. Lin Xuan's mocking voice came from the side. You overestimate yourself. With your current cultivation level, how dare you try to control the samsara Tao of life and death? Aren't you afraid that the backlash will swallow you whole? But who is this woman? Is it worth it for you to waste this bit of heaven-seizing liquid for her? Wouldn't it have been better if you had given it all to me? His words weren't right, but that strong intent still stretched over. In an instant, the reincarnation cycle changed and the nether gate closed. Zhong Shou rolled his eyes and thought to himself, I'll say it because I know you won't sit by and watch. That's why I did it on purpose. Before he opened his mouth, Lu Wubbing explained on his behalf. At this moment, I am the person of Lu Wushuang. My old master has already died under Ruler's sword, and this is his last wish. Ruler is kind and benevolent. I thank you on behalf of the old master Lu Wushuang. Zhong Shou shook his head slightly. Kind? Zhong Shou wasn't a good person. At the start, he pitied her and was touched by Lu Wushuang's true feelings. After the matter, he regretted it. However, he was a person who kept his promises. Since he said it, then he would definitely do it. This trip was uncertain and life and death was hard to predict. Who knew whether or not he would have a chance to complete this promise in the future? Thus, he borrowed Lin Xuan's hands to do it in advance. Before coming from the cloud world, he also said the same thing to Kong Yao and Xin Yuaniren. If they couldn't return, then they would retreat from the cloud world and seek protection from Master Longying. This time, he was prepared to die. Even if he died, he would head in to take a look. Is everything in the 9 Extreme death jail like this? No. This is a restriction set up by the Liu family. The death jail is invaded by Yin power and is most afraid of Yang fire. Just as Zhong shocks and relaxed, Liu Wubbing said, "However, it isn't much better inside. You can die a quick death here, but inside you will slowly be skinned and torn apart. Your bones and marrow are being sucked out." Zhong Shou's expression turned green. Jingyin couldn't help but close her eyes and chant Buddhist scriptures. If that is the case, then all the more we have to take a look. In just a moment, Zhong Shou recovered and bowed towards Lin Xuanxuang. "I will leave everything to Master. Only now do you know how to beg me?" Lin Xuanxuang giggled. Her expression slowly turned solemn. "However, you need to think carefully. 10,000 years ago, I followed you into the death jail." Liu Wubbing's words don't need to be said at all. If you are unlucky and alert the few end realms of the Liu family, even I won't be able to save you. Liu Wubbing shook his head. Of course not. To the few elders of the Liu family, it is better to have less trouble than it is. Even if they have doubts, they won't report it and will wait until everything is investigated. Will they deal with it privately or ask for help from the Saint Venerable? Any matter would alert the Saint Venerable and ask for help from the Celestial Dynasty. Wouldn't that make those few useless? What I am worried about is escaping from the death jail. Lin Xuanxuang looked at Liu Wubbing and then nodded. Those words make sense. You don't need to worry about how to escape. Be careful. I am still waiting for this woman to awaken her last life's wisdom. Will she go crazy or will she accept her fate? I am really looking forward to it. After speaking, he chuckled and pulled Jingyin towards the extreme light adversity surpassing boat in the distance. Jingyin was helpless and could only bow towards Zhong Shou and say sincerely, "May the Buddhas in the world bless the future Buddha to return safely." After saying this, she felt that it wasn't right. The future Buddha was not only a Buddha, but also a Buddha head. He should be the one protecting the Buddhist faction. Zhong Shou broke into a laugh and didn't hesitate anymore. Together with Liu Wubbing, they turned into a streak of light and charged into the formation. The dust and fire spread out and became more and more dense. Everywhere the two of them passed, there was an eye-piercing red light. Just as the resistance was increasing, dozens of sword shadows flew up around Zhong Shou. The 10 Extreme Imperial Tao Destruction Sword Formation was activated, and all of a sudden, numerous sword glows slashed in all directions. It caused their movement speed to increase as they charged forwards. Just as more and more fire dust was gathering, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Liu Wubbing's brow rose up, and a look of joy appeared on his face. "Ruler, this is the place." With a slap of his hand, a crack appeared in front of the two of them. Zhong Shou instantly smiled and entered without hesitation. A moment later, he appeared in another space that was covered in dust and fire. Just this time, he saved 3 breaths of time and didn't need to be entangled with the formation. What Liu Wubbing cultivated was the gap word true technique, and his ability in this area was above his. Looking out once more, the death jail barrier was right in front of their eyes. However, the next period would be the most dangerous and difficult. Chapter 908. Energy surged, and the dust particles that surged over were like the sun that Zhong Shou had seen in that special world. It burned and split from the inside out, the balance of the core collapsing and giving off endless heat and light. Even if it was just a tiny bit, it was still enough to kill a spirit realm expert. When a whole bunch of them flew over, even at this moment, Zhong Shou, whose strength was far above celestial realm, found it tough to deal with them. The 37 Imperial Tao Dragon Tooth swords continued to spin and slash. However, within 10,000 feet, sword energy surged, giving off a huge aura. Gradually, it shrank back to within 100 feet, forming a layer of energy sword barrier. It went all out to defend this small space, not allowing the dust particles to enter. It protected Zhong Shou and Liu Wubbing as they continued to charge into the depths of the formation. The latter seemed to have absolute trust in Zhong Shou and didn't bother about anything else. Even at the most dangerous moment when the dust was about to reach his body, he didn't waver at all. He only focused on using the space-time gap here. It allowed the two of them to enter the depths of the formation without any danger. At the start, Zhongsho was a little worried. Moments later, he knew that Lu Wubbing was the one who was worried. In terms of formation Dao, he was indeed above him. He also seemed to understand this fire-dust formation really well. Thus, he stopped being distracted and focused on protecting the two of them so that they wouldn't be hurt by the fire dust that covered the sky. The 37 swords were controlled like they were his arms. Around his body, he drew out many exquisite arcs, attracting the great path's spiritual energy and blocking out the dust particles. He didn't care much about the heat and light of the flames. He grasped the unlimited beginning and end Tao and didn't fear such heat and light that no one controlled. It was just the moment such a thought flashed across his heart, Zhongsho's brow rose up. He felt an extremely vast spiritual sense cover over. It wasn't blocked by the spiritual formation at all. The fire dust particles were totally ignored. Saint Realm? Zhongsho's heart sunk, thinking to himself that it came really quickly. It had only been 5 or 6 breaths of time since he entered the array. He also tried his best not to disturb the surroundings and cause too many changes to the restrictions within the formation. However, in just 6 breaths, the Saint Realm experts who were looking at the 9 extreme death jail reacted. Just as he was hesitating about whether he should retreat for the time being or think of a way to delay the battle, Lu Wubbing's cold voice started to fluctuate. This is the place that leads to the 3rd level of the death prison. This subject's strength is insufficient. Monarch. A purple spiritual light flashed in Samuraim's eyes as he looked in the direction that Lu Wubbing was pointing at. In just an instant, he was able to see where the gap was. However, when it reached a certain level of space, there was also a strong resistance. Without any hesitation, without any random thoughts, before Lu Wubbing's words landed, Zhongsho's nameless sword slashed out. Time accelerate. Spacefold. Karma invert. Fate lock. Around him, 79-star Dao seeds appeared and fell along with the sword light. Following this, there was a loud explosion as the 100,000 fire dust in this space were all wiped out. The rift began to crumble as countless invisible cracks began to form in the air. That gap was also directly smashed open by this sword that didn't hold back at all. Just as the Saint Realm's spiritual sense stretched over, the Saint Realm's spiritual sense was about to reach out. Zhongsho used his spiritual power to sweep up Lu Wubbing's body and toss him into the space crack. He totally disappeared from this space, causing the fire dust that gathered over to lose their target and return to calmness. However, after a short while, an old man in a red robe suddenly stepped forward. Who knows where he came from as he stepped into the void, looking down at where Zhongsho and Lu Wubbing had disappeared with a smile. To be able to calmly break through until here. These two people are really amazing. Oh, that last sword is really extraordinary, actually able to pierce through 16 layers of restrictions and 4 layers of space barriers. Unfortunately, I came too late and couldn't personally witness it. His tone was filled with praise, but on his face, he shook his head and scoffed coldly, sighing. Although the two of them weren't Lu family criminals, since they were in the death jail, it would be even harder for people like them who weren't on the Lu family criminal list to break out of the jail. I really don't know if I should say that you all don't know how high the sky is or how thick the earth is. Or is it that my Lu family 9 extreme death jail isn't as fierce as it used to be? However, since you have dragged me down, I will have a headache for you all. Thinking about it, he sent a few golden streaks of light in all directions. Although it was a problem, it was just a small problem and there was no need for him to personally deal with it, even if this person's strength was above God realm. However, in a non-extreme death jail, it wasn't worth mentioning. Then, the red-robed old man looked towards the void outside of the formation with a weird expression. He felt that something wasn't right there. It was faintly discernible, but faintly made his chest tremble. He spread out his spiritual sense in all directions, but he didn't gain anything. The red-robed old man scoffed coldly, waving his sleeves and leaving the place. He looked like he didn't care, but a solemn expression flashed in the depths of his eyes. Either that place didn't have anything weird about it, or that the person who came was far stronger than him. This matter was really weird, and he had to be really careful when dealing with it. This 9 extreme death jail formation is just that. When Zhong Shou said these words, he was already standing in an unfamiliar world. In front of him was a wilderness hidden in a thick green mist. Beside him was Lu Wubing. After entering the 3rd layer of the death jail, Zhong Shou still didn't feel at ease. He teleported several times before he didn't feel the Saint Realm's spiritual sense searching him. This world was really huge and seemed to have some sort of power, such that Saint Realm venerables and other similar level people couldn't do whatever they wanted in this world. It saved him a lot of trouble. Zhong Shou's few methods to escape from the spiritual sense could also be preserved. At this moment, the weirdest thing was the fire dust formation. In terms of strength, it was really extraordinary. However, in terms of this formation, Zhong Shou didn't believe that only 2 people had escaped from the 9 extreme death jail in tens of thousands of years. Lu Wubing was really calm. The death jail formation is against the inside and not the outside. Ruler can look into your body and look at the spiritual energy around, and you will know what is going on. Zhong Shou was startled, spreading out his spiritual sense to take a closer look. In just a moment, his expression was really solemn. Before this, he didn't feel it, but at this moment, the true qi and spiritual sense in his body seemed to be locked up and slowly solidified. Luckily, Lu Wubing reminded him early and went all out to fight back, which was why his strength wasn't locked up too much. Not only that, but the 5-element spiritual energy around was still there. However, Zhong Shou's spiritual sense couldn't touch it at all. The only thing he could control was the fire element spiritual energy. Zhong Shou had an idea and tried to cast the various spells he knew, but there was no reaction. To be continued. Chapter 909. Although the 5-element spiritual energy was there, it couldn't be touched. The various law powers were also split up and locked down. It was the same for fire elemental spells. Zhong Shou had an idea, and a white flame burned in his hand. This was the sky-burning flame that burned in his palm without any restrictions. He felt that the flame power was at least 50% stronger than usual. Zhong Shou was deep in thought. In other words, only the Lu family sky-burning blood wasn't restricted. After thinking about it for a moment, he still made the 79 star Tao seeds in his soul ocean void space all appear, only to see that 60% of them were dim and lightless, 20% were slightly weaker, 10% were normal, and the last 10% didn't decrease but instead increased. Zhong Shou tried to cast out fate, cause and effect, time, life, and death powers. In just a moment, Zhong Shou's face relaxed. Although the 5 elements technique was restricted, the few great Tao true intents that he grasped were much less restricted. As for the beginning and end laws, they weren't restricted at all. The source word true, meaning that he newly grasped, caused his true qi and soul energy to be able to grow and multiply even in such an environment. This death jail had a huge suppression on his strength. However, on another aspect, it also increased his strength, so its use was really limited. The restrictions in this death jail were indeed terrifying, but to him, there were obvious limitations. Someone like Ruler who grasped the various source Taos wouldn't exceed 10 fingers in 10,000 years. In our Lu family, you're the only one. If it was someone like Ruler, the Lu family wouldn't be willing to throw you into this death jail. Lu Wubing shook his head and scoffed coldly. My parents came here. My strength was reduced by at least 70%. However, the purity of my sky-burning bloodline was only 50%. I was pretty much at the mercy of others. Zhong Shou kept silent, although his tone was really calm and one couldn't hear any rage. However, he could understand Lu Wubing's current mood. He didn't ask anymore and reached out with a hand. His finger pointed and tried to disturb the space barrier here. In just a moment, Zhong Shou's face darkened. It seemed like this death prison formation was really meant for the inside and not the outside. Not only was his strength limited, but there were also countless talisman formations surrounding him. He could also sense that the layers of space-time barriers were extremely firm. Even if he went all out and didn't hold anything back, he would most likely return empty-handed. Zhongshu only felt his heart turn cold. Lu Wubbing and his master really weren't lying at all. As expected, the restrictions in the death jail were really problematic. Even if Zhang Xian's strength wasn't restricted at all, the outcome wouldn't have changed. Unless one had strength above the Saint Realm, or if one had an expert like Lin Xuan supporting them from the outside, it was almost impossible to escape from the death prison. Or perhaps the fiercely pulsing white flame in Zhongshu's palm suddenly calmed down. However, the surrounding space-time and even the laws were collapsing. 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers. When the 7th layer of the outer realm's space-time barrier and talismans collapsed, the sky-burning flame power was stopped and couldn't advance any further. Zhongshu shook his head slightly. He clenched his right hand and extinguished the white flame. This sky-burning bloodline indeed had a miraculous effect on the power of the restrictions here. When he went all out to activate the sky-burning flame, he could sense that the space-time barrier that needed him to use all his strength to slash open was as weak as paper. However, outside of the 7th layer, there were at least 4 more layers of barriers. There were layers of even tighter talismans and restrictions, as well as the Starfire dust formation. Based on what Lu Wubbing said, the highest grade sky-burning blood would be able to enter and exit the death jail as one wished. In the Lu family, it was another form of punishment without being punished. They weren't restricted by the family rules and could do whatever they wanted. However, Zhongshu could be considered a direct bloodline in the sky-burning Lu family and was ranked really high. Not long ago, he had been cleansed by the marrow-burning blood spirit curse. However, even for him, he was still 4 levels away from breaking out of the prison. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to take this path. It was really tough to imagine how strong the complete form of the sky-burning bloodline would be. Lu Wubbing seemed to know what he was thinking and said calmly, "Legend has it that the sky-burning blood is extremely pure. However, it has the power to wipe out the world, and where one looks, nothing will exist. The sky-burning flame will also change. However, I don't know what the exact situation is. There are no records of it in the family, and it was said that since ancient times, there were only a dozen of them. They either reached End Realm, or they died in their End Realm tribulation." Zhongshu listened on quietly, but he didn't care much about those words. He continued to bring Lu Wubbing around the 3rd layer of the death jail. The 9 extreme death jail was connected to many tunnels, but their positions were uncertain. Even if he asked Lu Wubbing, it was useless. This was why Zhongshu placed most of his attention on searching for the entrance to the 4th layer. In his heart, he found it weird. In this world, apart from the lack of animals, there was also a green mist. It wasn't much different from a normal world. Zhongshu teleported dozens of times, and his spiritual sense found hundreds of spiritual fruits. They were all really rare items in the outside world and were filled with spiritual energy. Even if it wasn't a celestial realm or a paradise, it had nothing to do with the death jail. Just as he was thinking about this, Zhongshu's face twitched. His body was fixed to the spot, and he gritted his teeth. Fresh blood seeped from the corner of his lips. His entire body was spasming like there were thousands of knives cutting him. It couldn't be compared to when the blood spirit power acted up, but could be compared to when he changed his dual meridians. It also acted up really suddenly with no signs at all, and he was caught off guard. If that was the case, then it was okay. However, the hidden blood spirit curse power was activated for some reason. It was like a valve had been opened in his body. His body was burning like a flame, causing the pain to increase by 100 times. Luckily, the pain only lasted for a few moments before it slowly disappeared. The marrow-burning blood spirit curse power was once again suppressed by him. Only then did Zhongshu's tightly clenched fist loosen up, his eyes focused. If it wasn't for this sudden change, he would have forgotten about it. The marrow-burning blood spirit curse was far from over. It was only temporarily suppressed after he advanced to God Realm. However, where did this pain come from? At this moment, there was nothing wrong with his body. Was it Turning around, he saw that Lu Wushuang's face was ashen white. His eyes were filled with the calmness that he was used to. The third layer of the death jail is also known as the thousand-knife death jail. Every 2 hours, the people here will experience such pain, like being sliced by 1,000 knives, hence the name. Zhong Shou couldn't be distracted to listen to the following words. At this moment, he only felt like his eyes were being scorched by flames, a heart-piercing pain. To be continued. Chapter 9:10. If before it was like being sliced by thousands of knives, the intense burning pain was something that Zhong Shou could bear with. However, at this moment, the pain in his eyes burned right into the depths of his soul. It caused Zhong Shou to want to personally dig out his eyes. Those threads of burning blood spirit flame power, the vital energy and true qi in his body, and even the spiritual energy. They all gathered in his eyes and poured in. Apart from the pain, there was also a swelling pain that he couldn't bear. Right away, he knew that this change had something to do with his sky-burning bloodline and blood spirit curse power. It should have been triggered by the special environment of this place, which was why it suddenly acted up. Damn it, how annoying! The blood spirit curse power in his body that was slowly fading seemed to be replenished. At this moment, not only was it filled with strength, but it was also several times fiercer than at the start. The blood and marrow deep in his bones seemed to be burning, but also like flames were being injected into them, making them extremely hot. The intense itchiness made one feel unbearable. The pain in his eyes struck his heart. He also felt like there was a layer of membrane in his eyes, a door. It blocked in front of this power that was about to explode. It was really firm, no matter how the hot blood spirit power attacked. It was unable to break through. At this moment, Zhong Shou really wanted to rip this door apart to vent out all the pain from the swelling of the flame power. He also felt that if this door was opened, something terrifying would happen. Luckily, the pain came quickly and left just as quickly. When the door rebounded all of the power, the door rebounded all of it. All the true qi and blood dissipated in just a moment and returned to their original position. The blood spirit power also disappeared without a trace. If it wasn't for his eyes still burning up, he would have thought that the intense pain just now didn't happen at all. At this moment, Zhong Shou's body was covered in a cold sweat. He didn't know what was going on. Was the second explosion of the marrow burning blood spirit curse like this? After taking in a few deep breaths, Zhong Shou finally calmed himself down and then laughed bitterly. This was the first time he had experienced such a feeling of being unable to hold on. He suspected that if the pain lasted just a breath longer, he might personally destroy his own eyes. At the same time, he instinctively felt that something was wrong with the situation. He examined his body and found nothing out of the ordinary, but he couldn't figure out the reason. Zhong Shou could only shake his head slightly and ignore it for the time being. He thought to himself that if this pain really came once every 2 hours, then it would really torture him to the point of insanity. The non-extreme death prison was indeed worthy of its name. It should have merged into the source laws of the death jail world, such that even if cultivators wanted to block it, they wouldn't be able to do so. The formation method of this world was totally twisted. Who knows which end-realm Lu family expert did it? He thought back to Lu Wubbing. After he was born, he lived in such an environment. It was a miracle that this person's words and actions were no different from ordinary people, just as willpower alone was comparable to his. Thousand Blades death prison. This death jail world is a little weird. He was afraid that the bone-deep pain would act up once more and cause other changes, so he didn't want to waste any more time. Zhong Shou teleported dozens of times, crossing 100 miles in this world as his body flashed continuously. This world was huge and even exceeded the cloud world. There weren't many people here. Zhong Shou's spiritual sense was blocked by the green mist, but he could still search 4,000 miles. He sensed 3 to 4 million auras along the way. The Lu family had 800 worlds and trillions of people. For there to be so many prisoners in one layer was far less than what Zhong Shou expected. He even noticed a few heaven and earth variants. Zhongsho didn't want to cause more problems. He used his spiritual sense to ask Hanshi, and after realizing that it wasn't interested, he avoided it. The Tao intents of these few beasts weren't compatible with Hanshi's. Even if it swallowed them, it wouldn't gain anything. Luckily, there wasn't only one entrance to the fourth layer. In just an hour, Zhongsho found a place. It was a deep abyss that one couldn't see the bottom of. Numerous space-time powers were stirring within. However, there were more than 10 mutated spirit beasts guarding the entrance of the abyss. Their vicious aura was even above Hanshi's. There were all kinds of spiritual bugs and beasts. Like they had been hungry for numerous years, their eyes were red. They were all thousands of miles away from one another. They were wary of one another and maintained a certain distance. Most of their attention was placed on the deep abyss beneath the mountains. All the plants and fruits in this world are poisonous. Even those spiritual treasures are no exception. Although they can fill their stomachs, if they are eaten, they will be in so much pain that they wish they were dead. There are only a few types of food. Only 10% of the people in this 1,000-blade death jail can live without worrying about food and clothing. As for these spirit beasts, they usually feed on humans. Lu Wubbing said, the punishments in the 9 extreme death jail are one layer after another, each layer more cruel than the last. This is why anyone who enters will think of ways to break through to the next layer. This is something that the sky-burning Lu family allows. Such people are usually very strong, and these mutated spirit beasts love them the most. Zhongsho laughed and directly charged down into the deep abyss. As soon as he got close, the dozen or so mutants reacted one after another. A few of them who were quick instantly turned into streaks of light and dashed over. Strands of vicious energy surged toward him. Some of them were powerful, some were sharp, and some of them were powerful. However, the moment they reached the side of Zhongsho, a sword light exploded and instantly covered thousands of feet, amongst which there was an extremely swift silver light that one couldn't see with one's eyes. It brought with it many afterimages and numerous light blades. Instantly, blood splattered and several cries rang out. Those few variant spirit beasts all retreated. Zhongsho reached out with his hand, and 79 stars appeared. Fusing the power of dozens of stars, he formed a giant hand that grabbed the 2 mutated spirit beasts. At this moment, Hanshi didn't wait for him to instruct it as it sped into the bodies of the 2 variant spirit beasts. It snatched the 2 beast pellets one by one. At this moment, there were dozens of variant spirit beasts who all rushed over. Zhongsho's brow rose up. There were many natural variants here. Although most of them were only spirit realm, and only 3 of them were god realm, they weren't a threat to him. However, if there were too many of them, it would be problematic. He didn't continue to fight and directly charged into the whirlpool. In the instant that he passed through, he sensed that the dozen or so mutants behind him had all diverted their spiritual senses and were instead attacking the injured mutant spirit beasts. Outside of the deep abyss whirlpool, it was a chaotic battle. Dozens of variant spirit beasts were either attacking or killing one another. Zhongsho wasn't surprised at all. The natural variants fought to the death, as expected. Chapter 9:11. He passed through the bottomless abyss whirlpool in just an instant. When Zhongsho broke out from the chaos of space, he saw thousands of white shadows wrapping around him. Behind them was a wave of cold power that could freeze everything as well as claw light. Spider silk? Zhongsho thought about it and understood what was going on. Since there were mutated beasts hiding at the entrance, then how could the exit be so calm? When he thought about it, the 79 star Tao seeds spread out in all directions. His body flashed, and he disappeared from the spot, causing the sticky spider silk to hit the air. The nameless sword also exploded out at that moment. The blazing white sky-burning flame covered the sword body. All of a sudden, thousands of brilliant sword shadows rose up and tore the space apart, almost shattering it into pieces. Along with a few cries, the few mutated beasts all retreated. The beasts on the 4th layer were much stronger than those on the previous layer. They took a few swords head-on and were only lightly injured. Zhongsho didn't care, doing it in a rush. The sword energy split, and there was no power at all. The seemingly vast and majestic sword light was just used to threaten. As expected, the 20-odd strange beasts that were pouncing over all paused for a moment and slowed down their speed. However, that violent killing intent still locked onto him tightly. However, the millions of sword shadows around Zhong Shou surged up. It was endless and endless, its aura becoming more and more majestic. It vaguely formed a circle of swords, causing the strange beasts that were charging over to either reveal a look of fear or retreat without any results. Amidst the chaos, a few tiny silvery white shadows shuttled through the monstrous sword light. It ignored space and pretty much shattered the concept of time and the laws of the Grand Path. The silver-white flying knife arrived in an instant. A huge force burst forth from the saber and directly pierced through the body of a mutated spirit beast. Blood flew everywhere, following which several more blood threads exploded out. Those few green-white flying knives pierced through the bodies of those few mutated beasts. Then, a large amount of blood mist exploded, and the remaining corpses of the mutated beasts were all burned. It was the sky burning true words that took away the last bit of life from those few natural variants. On the other hand, Hanchi's body flashed and snatched 3 more beast pellets. Then, just as Zhong Shou flashed once more, it returned into his sleeves. After killing the few that were the fastest, Zhong Shou's 79-star Dao seeds were successfully spread out 10 million miles. Dozens of teleportations, and in just a dozen breaths, he moved 10,000 miles and totally broke away from those beasts that weren't willing to stop. Actually, with his ability, it wasn't that he couldn't kill them all. There were indeed quite a few immortal rank beasts in there, but for him, it would only take a few dozen breaths to deal with them. However, after all, he snuck into this world, and he had to be careful. He wasn't willing to waste time, and didn't want to make too much of a commotion and alert the Liu family prison guards. This was why before he left, Zhong Shou only attacked those few beasts that might be bothering him or that Hanchi might be useful to. This Saint Fire Ant Queen was really lucky. Last time it swallowed the shark snake's Niden and merged with large amounts of wish power that Zhong Shou purified. Its strength had greatly increased. Now that it merged with the nadins of a few more mutated beasts, who knows how much its source would be strengthened. The people of this world are restricted by spiritual restrictions. Most of the 5-element laws have been removed. Only these natural variants aren't affected by the restrictions. That's right. These things are the manifestation of one of the laws of heaven and earth. How can their connection with the foundations of the world be affected by this death jail formation? However, the laws that these mutated beasts grasped are a little too weak. Is it because there are too many of them, or is there another reason? There is also this sky-burning true flame. In this death jail, power is terrifyingly strong and pretty much counters all laws. It seems like this Liu family death jail isn't as simple as just a place of punishment. This was what Zhong Shou personally experienced. Just now, when he used the sky-burning flame to kill those few beasts, it was really easy. The Liu family people wanted to go up against those natural variants and survive in this death jail. The best way was to squeeze out every bit of potential in their bloodline to raise the quality of the sky-burning true flame. All of a sudden, numerous questions rose up in his mind. Zhong Shou didn't come here for that. After thinking about it, he was too lazy to bother. Only at this moment did he start to size up this world, following which he was slightly startled, only to see that there were 6 suns in the sky. The blazing and violent sunlight shone down, causing this place to be like a furnace. All he could see was yellow sand. The ground was cracked, and there was pretty much no vegetation. What was even more frightening was that light. It was like threads of energy needles shooting down. Even Zhong Shou's body protecting energy couldn't block it. When it stabbed into his skin, it was like millions of steel needles drilling into his body. Zhong Shou was deep in thought as he looked at his hand, only to see that there was a sizzling sound coming from his skin. His body was being burned and melted. His physical body was strong, and at this moment, he was able to go up against all intermediate magical treasures without being injured. However, under the shine of these millions of light beams, he still couldn't take it. He couldn't help but think that if he was already like that, then what about the others? He turned around and looked at Lu Wubbing. As expected, the latter's situation was even more tragic. Luckily, he was peak late celestial realm, and after borrowing his Book of Ian, he learned a lot. He could barely hold on and didn't end up like what Zhongsho imagined. This world is known as the Light Needle Death Jail. Below Heaven Realm, no one can last for more than 10 days. However, every 10 days, this world will have rain, allowing people to take a breather. He waved his sleeves and opened up the ground. One could see numerous small snake shadows twisting and struggling in the dirt. This is the earth-seeking ant snake. It can't see the light and can't see the wind. There are billions of them in this world, and they are spread all over the ground. The people in this jail all eat these snakes. Zhongsho felt a chill down his spine. These earth-seeking ant snakes were the food of the sinners in this death jail. Wasn't it to prevent the Lu family sinners from hiding underground when the sun was at its brightest? Clenching his fists, Zhongsho's fingernails dug deep into his flesh. Blood seeped down from the corner of his lips, and he didn't even notice it. So, Zhongsho's mother lived in such a cruel hell for 20 years. Taking in a deep breath, Zhongsho slowly calmed himself down. At this moment, there was no point in being anxious or hating. He could only find his mother as soon as possible. Then, what is the 8th layer like? Based on what Lu Wubbing said, Lu Hanyin was locked up in the 8th layer. Chapter 9:12. Ruler, you are making things difficult for me. Lu Wubbing shook his head. His tone was filled with self-mockery. I have only been to the 2nd to 7th layers in this jail. He was most familiar with these few levels below the 7th level. I have never been there and have never heard of it. The Lu family has always been secretive about the death jail. Not only are outsiders unable to find out the details, even the people in the family don't know what is going on. Zhongsho was slightly disappointed, his eyes filled with shock as he sized up Lu Wubbing. Listening to his words, it seemed like this person had personally experienced the Light Needle Death Jail and Thousand Knife Death Jail when he was young. Before this, he thought that it was a miracle that Lu Wubbing didn't lose his mind in the jail. At this moment, he was thinking about how this person was actually able to get out safely and stand in front of him. He always thought that in terms of mental fortitude, no one in the world was stronger than him. Now, it seemed like that might not be the case. Sighing, Zhongsho's spiritual sense locked onto the other star Dao seed that was spread out thousands of miles away. However, just as he had the thought of teleporting, he felt a huge pain in his eyes. It affected his nerves and instantly spread to his entire brain. All the vital energy in his body flowed in reverse and into his eyes. The burning feeling in his bone marrow rose up once more. The blood spirit energy that had just dissipated 2 hours ago started to surge once again. In his eyes, the door that had disappeared appeared once more. It was as if there were countless voices shouting in his ears. Zhongsho's expression was vicious as he tried his best to hold on. He swept his spiritual sense across his body to search for any suspicious areas. This time, he was finally able to deduce the reason for the changes. It is actually Hanshi. At this moment, the Saint Fire Ant Queen was curled up into a ball in his sleeves. It wasn't like a cocoon like before. Instead, its body was wrapped up in thin silver threads. It seemed like it was cleaning and refining the few mutated beast pellets that flew over. The few spirit beasts that Hanshi chose to devour this time were all related to fire and light. A total of 8 strange beast cores, either silver white or fiery red, were enveloped by the 6 pairs of light wings. All of them shone brightly with ferocious flame power. Hanshi itself was wrapped in silver flames and was in a deep sleep. At this moment, waves of heterogeneous origin energy were being channeled through the symbiotic formation between the man and beast. What followed was countless mysterious information that could only be understood but could not be described in words. It was also this unique origin power that kept the blood origin in his bone marrow boiling and pouring into his eyes. Zhongsho found it strange. This time it was because of Hanshi. Then what was the reason for the previous time? When it first acted up, Hanshi didn't swallow any beast pellets. At that time, what was the trigger? This time it was different from the helplessness he felt towards the door. At this moment, on the seemingly indestructible barrier, under the continuous impact of his chi and blood, a thin, almost invisible crack actually appeared. He only felt numerous red flames flowing out from the crack. It caused his eyes to be about to burn, and the pain was unbearable. It was like there was something that was deeply imprinted into the depths of his soul ocean at this moment. However, when he looked closely, he didn't gain anything. There are other legends within the 9 Extreme Death Jail. The 9 Extreme Death Jail isn't the true death jail. There is another exit below the 9th layer. As long as one can charge to the deepest part of the jail, one can leave. Therefore, 90% of the sinners of my Lu family who are sent to this prison will think of all sorts of ways to move to the higher levels, hoping that they can lessen their pain. There are also many who will go all out to charge to the bottom of the death jail. My parents were the same. Unfortunately, they failed. Only when he said this did Lu Wubbing notice that Zhongsho's situation was a little uneasy. His body actually couldn't help but tremble slightly. His face was ashen white, devoid of blood. Before this, he only thought that Zhongsho was angry because of what happened to his mother. Only now did he notice that the situation wasn't right. Zhongsho seemed like he was enduring intense pain. However, this was just the light needle death jail. So why did he have to go through so much pain? The pain of the light needle burning his body was just a small matter to Zhongsho, who had gone through the marrow-burning blood spirit curse and wasn't worth mentioning. Did the effects of the blood spirit curse still not fade? That shouldn't be. Lu Wubbing's eyes were filled with a weird and worried expression as he frowned slightly. Ruler, is there something wrong? Why don't you rest for a while? Before his words landed, Zhongsho's voice forcefully interrupted him. I am fine. Taking in a deep breath, Zhongsho forcefully suppressed the pain. Luckily, as time went on, the weird energy that Hanshi injected into him was slowly weakening. Although the marrow blood essence was still burning, it wasn't as intense as before. It was slowly decreasing to a level that Zhongsho could take. What was regretful was that the door wasn't able to be opened. Even the crack from before was being repaired. At this point, Zhongsho himself started to feel curious about the barrier in his eyes. He wanted to know what was behind the door and what kind of bloodline mutation could cause Zhongsho such pain. It should be the ripples of the marrow burning blood spirit curse. It is okay. The spiritual energy in this world is thin and weak. Cultivating here will just consume true chi. The moment he said this, Zhongsho expressionlessly looked at Lu Wubbing. Speaking of which, the origin of the blood spirit curse was this person. However, this person was actually willing to sacrifice dozens of his own race's disciples just to chase after him. However, thinking about Lu Wubbing's life experiences, it wasn't surprising. In his heart, he probably didn't treat those who had the same bloodline as his own race. Maybe he didn't even have the concept of race. The feeling in his heart was really complicated. Originally, he was prepared to both use and defend against Lu Wubbing. This person was really smart, but his personality was too vicious, and he couldn't be at ease. However, looking at it now, he couldn't blame this person for the marrow-burning blood spirit curse. At this moment, Lu Wubbing was slightly startled. He stared right into Zhongsho's eyes, only to see a few extremely mysterious fire-colored runes appear in his eyes. It looked no different from normal talismans. However, just looking at one another, Lu Wubbing felt like the blood in his body was burning on its own. His mind and soul ocean were like huge waves. Lu family world burning blood eyes? The moment such a thought flashed in his mind, Lu Wubbing frowned and shook his head. It didn't seem like it. However, before he was able to think about it, Zhongsho wrapped him up with a streak of spiritual energy. Under that blazing red sun, it brought him through the void to search for the entrance to the 5th layer. Chapter 9:13. There were clearly fewer sinners in the 4th level of the light needle death prison than the 3rd level. The spiritual energy was thin, but the area was hundreds of times larger. Zhongsho spent a full 4 days here before he found the entrance to the 5th layer. This place was different from the other 2 death jails. It was a world wrapped in flames. There was lava all around, and the breath one exhaled was filled with fire energy. Only a few rare places could allow living beings to survive. Based on what Lu Wubbing said, this place was called the Molten Death Jail. This layer was where the Lu family punished celestial realm and above criminals. It wasn't easy to survive in this jail. Every day at noon, they would be subjected to a forbidden technique similar to the marrow-burning blood spirit curse. However, the marrow-burning blood spirit curse used the life, energy, and true essence of other Lu family people as fuel. What this world burned was the marrow and blood essence of the people in this jail. When Zhongsho entered the 5th layer, it was coincidentally 11 p.m. when the forbidden technique activated. He was totally unable to defend against it, and it exploded out in his body. In an instant, vital energy surged and charged into his eyes. This time it didn't activate the sky-burning blood in his body. Within his soul ocean, the 9-tailed sky fox, lightning phoenix, and water Chila marks were all activated. All of his bloodline power was gathered in his eyes. An even bigger crack appeared on the door that was flickering in and out of existence. More red flames surged and imprinted into his soul ocean. It caused Zhongsho's face to turn ashen white. If it wasn't for his strong will, he would have fainted on the spot. Luckily, the few mutated beast pellets that Hanshi snatched weren't totally refined and were still in deep sleep. When they charged at the entrance to the 5th layer, the few that Zhongsho snatched were still in his heaven and earth bag. The true essence that Hanshi injected into him was already reduced to 10% of the initial amount. This was why Zhongsho was able to barely hold on. This time he could clearly sense it. It was true that something had flowed into his soul with the flow of flames and was imprinted in his soul essence. However, there were some scattered patterns that used the Tao word in his soul ocean as the source to seep into the crack. Zhongsho gritted his teeth and held on for a full 2 hours before the forbidden technique dissipated. At this moment, Zhongsho was drenched in sweat and his body was exhausted and weak. However, there were more questions in his heart. How did this happen? I thought that it was just a change in the sky burning blood, but it seems like it isn't just that. This time, the other 3 bloodline powers in his body was mixed in. Hanshi's use of it was totally negligible. This made him confused, and he couldn't figure out the reason. Could be a bloodline advancement. But in this world, how can there be someone who can raise their bloodline like me? What is behind this barrier in my eyes? Thousands of questions surged out in his mind, but Zhongsho didn't have an answer to them. At this moment, his body was pretty much exhausted. Helpless, he could only bring Lu Wubbing and teleport a few times to choose a place where the spiritual veins gathered to rest. Luckily, the spiritual energy in this world was abundant and much stronger than the Light Needle Death Jail. Along with the help of medicine, in just 30 minutes, Zhongsho was fully recovered. However, when he thought about how in just a few hours, he could experience it once more, this kind of vital energy flow felt like his entire body was breaking apart. Zhongsho's head couldn't help but feel numb. No matter how strong his heart was, he felt powerless at this moment. More importantly, it wasn't this pain. If I face those mutated spiritual beasts and natural variants, what should I do when they act up? Although I don't fear them, I will be distracted. The vital energy flow will be harder to control, and my combat strength will be reduced by 30%. Thinking about it for a moment, Zhongsho decisively cast out a few seals. In just a moment, a talisman was hidden in the depths of his eyes. At the crucial moment, the forbidden technique could sever the connection between his eyes and his physical body's origin soul at any time. The vital energy flow in his body was due to the mutation of his bloodline. Any technique wouldn't work, and instead, it might cause unforeseen consequences. Zhongsho had no idea. All he could think about was to cut off this pain at a specific time. Although there might be problems, he couldn't care about so much. In the next instance, he raised up the illusionary heart mirror and placed it behind his head. His spiritual sense was connected. Under the illumination of the green light, nothing could hide. The pain was cut off, which meant that his vision had to be cut off too. When experts fought, they relied on their spiritual sense. However, that didn't mean that vision wasn't important. Using the illusionary heart mirror to replace his eyes was what he needed. However, when he summoned the illusionary heart mirror, Zhong Shou was slightly startled. Under the green light of the illusionary heart mirror, there was pretty much no dead angle. Zhong Shou's entire body was reflected in the mirror. However, at this moment, not only did a few mysterious runes appear in his eyes, but there was also an abnormal blood color. What was the reason for this? Just as Zhong Shou was thinking about it, the blood runes disappeared along with the pain. Lu Wubing, who was sitting quietly at the side, also sensed something. He was in deep thought. Zhong Shou didn't think much and directly asked, "Do you know the reason for this?" This person's expression wasn't filled with doubt, but deep in thought. He definitely knew something. "I don't know." Lu Wubing directly shook his head and asked, "Ruler is one of the few direct bloodlines of our Lu family. I think there should be the mark of the world-burning blood eye in your legacy." World-burning blood eye? There was an explosion in Zhong Shou's soul ocean. A memory that had been buried deep in his mind suddenly surged out. World-burning blood eye? There really was such a memory in his bloodline legacy. However, Zhong Shou didn't pay much attention to the sky-burning Lu family matters. As for the bloodline inheritances of the Lu family, he only chose those great Tao insights that were beneficial to him and merged them into his body. As for the other memories, he rarely came into contact with them. At this moment, Lu Wubing reminded him, and this time it was dug out from the deep memories. "It doesn't seem like it. The world-burning blood eye was one of the top bloodline abilities of the sky-burning Lu family. The eye was blood-colored and had the ability to burn the world. However, in the records of the Lu family, out of the 20-odd people who had the world-burning blood eye, only one was born with it. His father was End Realm and his mother was Saint Realm. However, because he couldn't take the power of the blood eye, he died after leaving behind a few children. The other three relied on special heaven-grade spiritual treasures to form the world-burning blood eye. Apart from these 4 people, the rest of the people had all reached the Saint Realm. They were able to greatly refine their bloodline power to form it. There is no one in the Lu family who was able to use their own strength to reach the Saint Realm. None of the situations were similar to his, and the characteristics recorded were totally different. Recently, Zhong Shou didn't use any treasures or spiritual items. Chapter 9:14. Not only did he not consume any spiritual medicine, but his sky-burning blood was also far from reaching its peak level. Naturally, he definitely wouldn't be able to give birth to this world-burning blood eye ability. In his memory, the experts of the Lu family who had the world-burning blood eye were naturally successful. Naturally, they grasped it. How was it as tough as he was now and was being tortured? Furthermore, this time around, several of the bloodlines in his body were also implicated. His bloodline power was in a mess, and the situation was getting further and further away from the world-burning blood eye in his memory. This was what I guessed before. I thought that if Ruler really had the world-burning blood eye, then you would be able to enter and exit the 9 extreme death jail as you wish. Then I thought about it and realized that it wasn't. However, there are some similarities within. Lu Wubing shook his head and wore an iron mask on his face. Along with the armor, it caused his aura to become more and more indiscernible. Looking at Ruler's situation, there are changes in your eyes that are related to your bloodline. I heard that the 9-tailed sky fox bloodline god beast has the illusionary eye ability. Ruler's bloodlines are mixed, and it caused a change. It is tough to know the reason why. As for what changes there will be in the future, I can't predict it. However, my Lu family legacy has some techniques that are related to the world-burning blood eye. Maybe they will help Ruler. Zhong Shou's brow rose up. Lu Wubing's words were similar to what he had guessed. Then, he carefully searched through his memories, and his expression relaxed. He really did find a few secret techniques. They were the eye-protecting and eye-nurturing techniques. Any eye-type ability would have a huge burden on the physical body of the eyes. Those crystal beasts and god beasts were still okay, so human race cultivators needed to nourish and train their eyes to reach a certain level before they could use it. As for the eye protection technique, it was to prevent the eyes from suffering too much damage when using the divine ability. These techniques didn't solve the problem, but the latter could reduce his pain when the vital energy flowed back and struck the barrier. The eye-nurturing technique could be used now. The repeated strikes had caused his eyes to be filled with injuries and his meridians to be in chaos. He also felt fortunate. Be it human cultivators or crystal beasts, their weakest point was their eyes. This was the hardest place for cultivators to temper their physical bodies. Zhongshou used the infinite beginning and end wish power to strengthen his body. His entire body was evenly distributed. However, he managed to survive these few attacks without any mishap. If it were an ordinary cultivator, their eyes would have exploded long ago. Even if he used the rebirth technique to repair it, it would still be extremely fragile. The Liu family's world burning blood eyes and the nine-tailed sky fox clan's illusory pupil divine ability. He couldn't remember the Qilin, but the ancient Thunder Luan seemed to have an eye-type divine ability. He just couldn't remember its name. Could it be that several bloodlines were mixed, and they all had the same eye-type divine ability, which caused the mutation? Just as Zhongshou was thinking about it, he felt his sleeves move. Hanshi had woken up. He flew out from his sleeves, and in a flash, he was 10,000 feet high in the air. It was also at this moment that the world that was filled with blazing lava suddenly dimmed. Then, a dozen or so streaks of black light attacked from all directions. Within this world, numerous vengeful energies gathered over. Zhongshou took a look and knew that this was Hanshi's celestial realm tribulation. He wasn't surprised that after swallowing the shark snake beast pellet and merging with the wish power of Songling World, Hanshi was already half a foot into the celestial realm. At this moment, it had swallowed a few of its own kind. Using this as a chance, it was indeed time for it to step into the celestial realm. Following behind Hanshi were 36 Saint Fire Soldier ants. They surrounded below, forming a formation. These soldier ants were similar to Hanshi's children and even its clone. At this moment, they were naturally facing the tribulation. The black light slashed over, but Hanshi slashed out with a few blades without any effort. It easily shattered the tribulation power into numerous pieces. There was also the power of gathering flames. All the flames in this 3,000-mile world were gathering towards his body. It was really bright and vast, like a sun hanging in the air. It caused the black light to be unable to get close to it. At this moment, Little Gold flew out from his sleeves, turning into a small blood sword monster lord and standing on Zhongshou's shoulder. It had a complicated expression as it looked into the air. A moment later, when the tribulation power dissipated, it curled its lips in disdain and headed back into Zhongshou's sleeves. Zhongshou found it amusing. He knew that this fellow wanted to win. This was a good thing. Zhongshou let it be and didn't bother about it. His eyes were filled with a weird expression. Hanshi being able to easily deal with the tribulation was within his expectations. Heaven and earth variants could go up against god beasts. After entering the 9 extreme death jail, it swallowed its own kind and made up for its lack of ability legacies. At this moment, the tribulation power was less than 10% of his celestial realm tribulation. It would be weird if it couldn't handle it. What made him feel weird was how Hanshi dealt with the vengeful energy that gathered over. It was actually going all out to block it out of its body. However, it wasn't rejecting it. It was suppressing, controlling, and even purifying it before carefully merging it into its body. In his heart, Zhongshou was both happy and emotional. It knew how to control the vengeful energy so quickly. It was born, but it wasn't controlled by it. Hanshi had obviously broken away from its instincts and had its own nature. The chances of it attacking its master had dropped to an extremely low level. Who knows if it was because of Hanshi's talent or because he taught it well. However, For Hanshi to be able to awaken and advance at this time was a great thing. Along with Hanshi starting to form its pellet, the other Saint Fire Silver ants started to form cocoons in the air. He knew that there wouldn't be any more accidents. However, it still needed some time for Hanshi to form its pellet. Zhongshou decided to close his eyes and enter a meditative state. This wait lasted for a full day. The forbidden technique of this world also activated 3 times in a row. As expected, the vital energy flowed backwards. However, this time he tried those few secret techniques in the Liu family bloodline legacy. As expected, it was much better. Even Amaro burning blood spirit curse power was being suppressed. Although the pain was intense, he could bear with it. After watching for 40 hours, Hanshi finally formed a beast pellet. It slowly landed on his shoulder, its 6 pairs of silver wings spreading out. Within the tassel-like glow, there were a few more threads of golden color. Its form didn't change, and it looked like a human. However, Zhongshou could feel that the little person on his shoulder had terrifying power in its body. Zhongshou laughed, and through the few mutated beast pills he had snatched over to him. Hanshi's eyes moved slightly. It was really picky as it chose 2 from within. With a flap of his silver wings, he hid it within his own silver wings. As for the rest, in Hanshi's soul, there was a sense of resistance. Chapter 9:15. Zhongshou couldn't help but feel shocked. The few mutated beasts he chose should be beneficial to Hanshi. However, this Saint Fire Ant Queen didn't appreciate it. In the next instance, Hanshi's spiritual sense spread over. A look of understanding appeared in Zhongshou's eyes. As expected, if it can continue to swallow and evolve, wouldn't these heaven and earth variants be invincible? Every time a mutated beast advanced, the number of laws it could swallow and refine was limited. At this moment, although Hanshi still had a lot left, it was still really precious. It wasn't willing to easily merge with it. The monster pellets he took were beneficial to it, but it couldn't cause Hanshi's strength to change. Naturally, it didn't care about them. This Saint Fire Ant Queen was really smart and wasn't greedy. He would only start with the laws of light and fire. It merged all sorts of laws into it. At this moment, it had strengthened these 2 Daos to the extreme. With Zhongshou's observation, those natural variants he saw in the 9 extreme death jail, there really wasn't one that could compare to it. Liu Wubing and Lin Xuanshuang both praised this Ant Queen. Even amongst its kind, it was a king. It seemed like it wasn't just referring to the abilities it grasped, as well as its ability to breed soldier ants. As expected, even if it is born from heaven and earth, it can't break away from the Tao of balance. However, Senior Brother Han once said that if Shi Zi's master had a natural variant, he wouldn't have fallen. These words shouldn't only be able to help Master grasp those laws. Zhongshou was thinking about this, only to see that Hanshi didn't toss away those few beast pellets. Instead, she directly waved her silver wings and gave the nadins to the earliest few soldier ants under her. Zhongshou's head instantly felt numb. Did the soldier ants that Hanshi split off have the ability of a complete mutated beast? A moment later, Zhongshou heaved a sigh of relief. He felt both relaxed and regretful. These few soldier ants were obviously unable to fully merge with these beast pellets. Looking at the situation, just one celestial grade beast pellet contained heaven and earth laws, and it was already too much for them. It would be impossible for him to fuse anymore. However, even then, it was enough to increase their combat strength. Zhongshou's heart felt a chill. He took a deep look at these soldier ants before retracting his gaze. After leaving this temporary resting place, Zhongshou continued to travel through the air. This time he didn't use his spiritual sense to search around. Instead, he ordered the soldier ants under Hanshi to spread out, covering the ground and the sky. After Hanshi entered the realm, its spiritual senses soul realm. In this world where flames covered sky's strength, it wasn't restricted. St. Tess shows us as spiritual change of the Saint Fire show. Relying on these Saint Fire crystal ants, The million miles of land in the fifth layer wasn't much. In just 4 hours, Zhongsho found one of the 4 entrances to the sixth layer that Lu Wubbing mentioned. It was also a deep abyss. However, there weren't any mutated spiritual beasts. Instead, there were hundreds of high platforms. On each platform, there was a person. Some were muscular, some were enchanting women, some were thin and small. Dozens of them didn't look like humans. They were alien races that Zhongsho had never seen before. However, without exception, they were all tightly bound by dozens of chains as thick as a child's arm. They pierced through their muscles and collarbones, such that their bodies couldn't be more than 100 miles away from the high platforms. Not far away, there was a tall tower. With the spiritual formation protecting it, Zhongsho had no way to know what was going on within. Looking forward, Zhongsho was in deep thought. Lu Wubbing was the first to speak. These are the people that the Lu family captured when they conquered the outer regions. This 9 extreme death jail doesn't only lock up the criminals of the family, there are also many captives. Are these people all stained with the blood of our Lu family disciples? They are locked up here, and only by killing more than 10 people who try to cross the world can the chains be released and they can regain their freedom. Inside the tower were the guards of the Lu clan in the prison. Lu family rules are that if the guards die, these people will be killed for not doing their job well. He asked curiously, "Ruler, are you curious why no one is guarding the first 5 layers where the punishments are lighter?" However, the sky-burning Lu family arranged the entrance to the 6th layer like that. Zhongsho nodded slightly. This was something that he didn't understand. The first layer of the 9 extreme death jail was the safest world in the death region. Although there were restrictions compared to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th layers, they were like nothing. He really didn't understand why there were only some mutated beasts in these few layers. However, it was the entrance to the 6th layer. Why did the Lu family spend so much effort to block it? At a glance, one could see that these 100 people were all immortal realm cultivators. Although they weren't in their best states and were tortured by the restrictions of the molten death jail, their bodies were weak. However, each of them gave off a fierce aura, definitely not what the spiritual beasts in the first few layers could compare to. The Lu family actually has a time limit to their sentences. However, the moment they leave the death jail, there is no chance for them to escape. As such, the Lu family didn't stop them from migrating. Lu Wubbing hesitated slightly. As for this place, I don't know the reason. However, because of this, many people believe that there is an exit in the 9th layer. There has to be an exit, or maybe the Lu family is hiding some huge secret in the 9th layer. Before Lu Wubbing finished, Zhongsho shook his head. He had already given up on understanding the details of this place. He directly teleported and used a star Dao seed to appear above the abyss. The 100 celestial realm cultivators who were trapped were first stunned and then instantly came to their senses. Everyone's eyes were filled with fanatical joy. Amidst the clanging of countless chains, dozens of figures rose into the air one after another. Those spirit masters directly cast spells, gathering fire into flames and spreading over. Zhongsho didn't charge into the abyss. Instead, he looked at the high platform in the distance. At this layer, the chances of him covering his tracks when he passed through the world barrier was really small. Even if he killed all the people here, he would still alert the world protector venerables of the Lu family. This was why at this moment, Zhongsho didn't have any thoughts of holding back. If he wanted to safely step into the 6th layer of the death jail, the only way was to use lightning speed to solve this problem as quickly as possible. This was why the moment he attacked, Zhongsho went all out. When the sword light rose up, 6 silver flying knives sped out without a trace. They flashed in the air and pierced through the heads of the 6 celestial realm spirit masters. Chapter 9:16. The 6-god defensive knife technique could only nurture 6 true 6-god flying knives. Power had the most. However, in Zhongsho's bag, there were still dozens of flying knives that he had nurtured using his soul. These celestial realm cultivators who were locked up here weren't worth him using the true six-god knife. The knife flashed, and the brains of the six celestial realm spirit masters were pierced. At this moment, the nameless sword light suddenly shrunk and condensed, retracting to within 100 feet of Zhongsho. One Originine, within 100 feet, is my unbreakable sword domain. The sword light slashed out pretty much soundlessly. However, where the light passed, everything that struck over was slashed and forced back by the sword. Every time there was a clanking sound, every time there was a collision, the sword stored up strength, making it even more majestic and strong. When the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique accumulated to the extreme, Zhongsho's sword light changed once more. One Origin Yang, where the sword pointed, no one could block it. Millions of sword shadows were like the Milky Way rolling backwards, charging forwards. Layers upon layers of sword light instantly drowned out everything. The faces of the immortal rank cultivators were filled with shock and fear. In the next moment, they were sliced into numerous pieces by the vast sword shadow. Balls of blood, mist exploded. Many sword energies sliced and sliced, turning them into meat and blood. Just this sword alone killed the 10 celestial realm cultivators in front of Zhongsho. At this moment, he was just 1,000 feet away from the tower. He was so close, and there was no one blocking him anymore. Within Zhongsho's sleeves, dozens of silver-white streaks of light spread out and struck out in all directions. It was Hanshi and the 36 soldier ants under it. They were all as swift as light, unbelievably quick. Everywhere they passed, blood light flashed. At this moment, Hanshi's combat strength could already exceed normal peak celestial realm cultivators. As for his subordinates, those Saint Fire Soldier ants went through the tribulation with him. Although they hadn't stepped into the spirit realm, their strength was enough to fight above their level. Their minds were as one, and their coordination was far from what the immortal realm cultivators sealed by the stone platform could compare to. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 immortal realms were killed. It caused the remaining prisoners here to show fear on their faces. Zhongsho released the holy fire silver ants and ignored them. His figure flashed as he rushed toward the tower in the distance. Taking a step in the air, Zhang Xian's figure flashed. Then, he heard a furious holler from within, preposterous. Following the sound was a flail burning with pale white flames. At the end of the flail were a dozen or so iron balls, which smashed through the air. Wherever the sky incinerating flame passed, black lines would appear between heaven and earth. Zhongsho's brows rose up, and then he laughed coldly. Peak of a mortal step? This sky-burning flame was not bad. In this death jail, it was enough to fight against God Realm cultivators who weren't from the Liu family. However, in his eyes, it was just SOSO. Be it bloodline power or personal strength, it was far weaker than him. He still stepped down, and with a loud explosion, those iron balls were all scattered. All the pale white flames were extinguished. What replaced it was Zhongsho's lightning blaze 1,000 flames, pitch-black flames. Following that, a second kick was launched into the air. When the energy arrived, the spiritual formation was instantly smashed under the strong pressure. The upper level of the tower was kicked over and a section was forcefully sliced off. God Mirror? No. That voice was filled with terror. A person suddenly flew out from within the tower. He dashed down into the deep abyss and fled. Zhongsho laughed coldly and didn't stop him. However, a ball of fire charged out from his sleeves and turned into the shape of a qilin in the air. It suddenly bit down and captured the person who was trying to escape. Then, it happily bit down on the war prisoner and sent him in front of Zhongsho. It was like a cat that had caught a mouse and was trying to suck up to its master. Zhongsho smiled and patted Xiaory's head. Then, he turned around and looked behind him. From when he appeared to when he attacked to when he captured this person, only 5 breaths had passed. On those 100 stone platforms, there were still 50 people fighting with Hanshi and its subordinates. After the initial surprise attack, it would be tough for Hanshi and the soldier ants to take down the lives of these people. However, These Celestial Realm cultivators were also having a tough time holding on. A cold glow flashed in Samuraim's eyes, and killing intent appeared. Lu Wubbing opened his mouth, not far away. "Monarch, please wait. Please show mercy." Zhong Shou acknowledged. The sword attack that was about to explode out retracted. Then, he looked towards Lu Wubbing in surprise, his heart filled with doubt. Lu Wubbing didn't delay and explained right away. Most of these cultivators have their families broken and they just want to leave the death jail. They're all pitiful people, but to Ruler, they are all people you can use. I know that although Ruler has close to 10,000 iron cavalry, you lack high-grade Dao soldiers. Aren't these people just suitable? Ruler's master's injuries haven't healed. However, his spells can still go up against End Realm cultivators. With him helping from the outside, bringing them out will just require a little more effort. He said, "These cultivators have deep animosity with the Lu family, and their personalities are tough to tame." Before they were sent to the death jail, most of them were talents and wouldn't be willing to be under others. If they're willing to swear on their souls, to follow Ruler, and be restricted, that would be the best. If not, you can use a secret technique to wipe away their memories. If not, when you want to return to the Lu family and take over the sky-burning Saint Dynasty, these people will be problems. The words at the start were Zhong Shou's explanation to persuade him to stop. The words at the back were targeted at the Celestial Realm cultivators on the stone platform. Zhong Shou's eyes flashed, and he was in deep thought. Dao soldiers? He didn't only lack Spirit Realm cultivators under him. He didn't even have a single Celestial Realm cultivator. They were indeed lacking in high-end combat strength. It was okay now, but as time went on, things wouldn't be good, especially when the Cloud World spiritual wave rose and many cultivators returned. However, not only were these people strong, but they weren't weak either. However, because their vital energy was weak and they were restricted by the stone platform, they were so weak under his sword. After exiting the death jail, no matter where they were, many powers would try to recruit them. They would be treated as VIPs and respected. Were they really willing to be Zhong Shou's Dao soldiers? However, if they were in other forms, they wouldn't be restricted, wouldn't swear, and wouldn't be refined by him. Zhong Shou really couldn't be at ease. It had nothing to do with morals. He just couldn't trust them. He wasn't willing to spend so much effort to bring them out of the 9 extreme death jail, only to have someone stab him in the back. Zhong Shou wasn't a good person either. There was a reason why these people were trapped here, and most of them weren't good people either. Why did Zhong Shou have to waste so much effort to save these cultivators? As for what Lu Wubbing said about returning to the Lu family and taking charge of the sky-burning Saint Dynasty, it was just something he didn't care about at all. At this moment, the expressions of the Celestial Realm cultivators on the stone platform changed. They looked at Zhong Shou nervously. They knew that their lives were in the hands of this person who could kill dozens of Celestial Realm cultivators with a flick of his finger. When the other dozen people heard Lu Wubbing's words, their expressions changed. They were tempted and hesitant, especially when they heard the words End Realm. The faces of the 50 of them lit up. As for Lu Wubbing's words, they surprisingly kept silent. No one was annoyed and no one fought back. They were all in deep thought. Zhong Shou thought about it, but he still couldn't make a decision. He looked at the people below, and then his lips curled up as he retracted his sword attack. As Lu Wubbing had said, these people were indeed useful people to him. Under the torture of the fire death jail year after year, they were extremely strong. On one hand, their minds were trained to be really firm. On the other hand, they had no way to resist the temptation of being able to escape from the jail and unlock their chains. As long as they could escape, they were willing to pay any price. The nameless sword returned to his sleeves. He also kept Hanshi and the dozens of soldier ants. He temporarily didn't bother about the cultivators below. Instead, he grabbed the Lu family peak Celestial Realm cultivator who escaped from the tower. "Are you willing to answer my question?" he asked, only to see that person grit his teeth. His eyes were filled with venom and hatred as he looked over like a venomous snake. Although he was in a bad state, his eyes were really firm. With just one look, Zhong Shou knew that normal methods wouldn't be able to make him speak. Thus, he didn't say any nonsense and wasn't willing to waste time to ask. He pressed down on his head and directly used the soul-searching technique to search his memories. That person's soul was terrified and crazily struggled. While trying to stop his thoughts, he also tried his best to wipe out all his memories. However, he wasn't as fast as Zhong Shou. Threads of Buddhist faction wish power surged in and had the ability to suppress and repair. So you're called Lu Shua? What a good name. I didn't have time to send a message. Zhong Shou's heart was really calm. This was as he had expected. The tower was broken with one step. At that time, Lu Shua wanted to inform the few death jail guards about this matter. What was destroyed was not only the spiritual formation of the tower, but also the method this person used to inform the few Lu family venerables. However, at this moment, what he cared about the most wasn't that, but Zhong Weiran. He didn't immediately kill him and instead chose to capture him. He wanted to obtain news about Zhong Weiran from this person. As expected, he came here before. Zhong Shou was at a loss. In this person's memory, in his memories, a devilish and majestic man, like a god, forcefully charged in. No one was able to stop him, not even a thousandth of a second. Instead, all the sinners here were either dead or injured. He continued to search, but there were no more memories related to Zhong Weiran. This person also knew very little about the fifth layer and below. A moment later, this person's soul slowly couldn't take it anymore. Zhong Shou tried his best to maintain, but it was useless. In the end, it collapsed. The doubt in Zhong Shou's eyes became thicker and thicker. It seemed like his father really came to this death jail. Then, at this moment, where was Zhong Weiran? Did he escape? Or was he trapped below the sixth layer? Looking below, Zhong Shou felt his head hurt. He needed to think of a way to deal with these celestial realm cultivators. Chapter 9:17. A mere 8 hours later, a red-robed old man who looked to be in his 60s was standing on top of the ruins of the stone tower. He walked around the ruins. His face was filled with a cold, mocking expression. You can't even send out a message. How useless. You deserve to have your soul searched. His eyes landed on a corpse with a twisted head and stopped for a moment. The red-robed old man shook his head, retracting his gaze and looking in other directions. Killing 10 celestial realm experts in one strike. 6 of them were killed by a flying knife. Crushing the abyss-suppressing tower with 1 foot. Amazing, how overbearing, as expected from the person who could slash out that sword outside of the death jail. Is he not planning to cover his tracks anymore? That's right. Since he is here, he won't be able to cover it anymore. How problematic. Although this person isn't God Realm, his combat strength is stronger than normal initial God Realm cultivators. If he was outside of the death jail, he wouldn't be able to accurately judge this person's true cultivation and current realm. Then, at this moment, he roughly knew the strength of the person who forcefully flattened the abyss-suppressing tower and 100 stone platforms. He looked at the surrounding stone platforms, only to see that many of them were smashed to pieces. Hundreds of broken chains were scattered all over the ground. The person who attacked was really cunning and careful. Many of the traces were wiped away to set up a deceptive formation. However, the death energy here wasn't right. It was a little too thin. The red-robed old man thought about it seriously and then laughed coldly. You saved them? Just a few dozen celestial realm experts, and you actually dared to do that. Wasn't he being too petty? Oh, using them to refine Dao weapons is not bad. There were no other useful clues around, so the old man didn't look anymore. He retracted his spiritual sense and entered deep thought. The person who entered the 9 extreme death jail was obviously prepared and had a card up his sleeve. However, his foundations were definitely shallow, otherwise he wouldn't have been tempted by just a few dozen celestial realm cultivators. Then, why did he want to capture the person in charge here and search his soul? What did this person want to know? What was his goal for entering the death jail? The old man's eyes flashed, and moments later, his lips curled up, revealing a smile of understanding. Threads of killing intent appeared on his face. His escaping technique is not bad. At the very least, he could teleport several hundred miles away in an instant. This is confidence. even if I know where you are roughly. You can't find it in such a short time? This aura is quite familiar as well. It must be someone I've met before. Unfortunately, it's too faint and I can't tell. He looked deeply into the abyss, but his body didn't enter. Instead, he stepped into the void and directly passed through the death prison world. Xiaoqin strolled through the astral flame, dust, great formation, and the many space-time storms outside. About an hour later, they were far away from the 9 extreme death prison. A palace of fiery red jade with a radius of over 100,000 feet appeared before the elderly man's eyes. Hidden in the layers of space-time, it should have been impossible to see. However, the old man's divine thought directly reflected the location of the fired jade palace in his mind. As soon as they entered the palace, a few disciples of the Liu clan dressed as servants stepped forward to stop them. However, when they saw the appearance of the person who came, their expressions turned solemn. Then they all retreated and bowed respectfully. The red-robed old man still had his head lowered and didn't even look at him. He walked forwards and headed straight for the central courtyard. In just a moment, he was in front of a fiery red hall. Although it was a hall, it was more like a giant piece of jade. The moment the old man arrived, a flat, questioning voice spread out from within. Lu Tianqing, why aren't you guarding the 9 extreme death prison? Why did you run over to my place? The voice was like jade, cold and calm. It was really nice to hear. The red-robed old man didn't reply at first. Instead, he bowed respectfully towards the direction of the hall. Lu Tianqing greets Saint Venerable. After straightening his body, he opened his mouth and replied, Tianqing is here to ask for help from Saint Venerable. Ask for help? Did my Liu clan face a calamity? Or did something happen in the 9 extreme death prison? You should know that I have stopped caring about worldly matters. If it is a normal matter, then don't come to me. I know. I came this time to ask Saint Venerable to take the life of someone who snuck into the 9 extreme death prison. Before Lu Tianqing's words landed, he felt a furious intent pierce into the depths of his soul. He knew that the person in the palace was obviously impatient. He said calmly, if it was a normal person, it would be easy for me to kill that person. I might even be able to ignore him. However, this person's instant space technique is amazing. When he hides his aura, it is tough to find traces of him. Tianqing suspects that this person has an end-realm cultivator helping him. His words were as concise as possible. When he said the final sentence, the oppressive might disappeared. In this world, once an end-realm Saint Venerable was involved, it was never a small matter. End-realm? An extremely huge spiritual sense spread out in all directions. It swept layer after layer of space, world after world. Moments later, that jade-like voice spoke once more. Why did this person enter the death jail? Don't tell me that you know nothing. Lu Tianqing's eyes flashed. The cold smile in his eyes became thicker. As expected, there was an end realm. The Saint Venerable's spiritual sense definitely sensed some traces, which was why he asked. He wasn't surprised by the person's question. The sky-burning Liu family was one of the top powers in this region. They had 3 end realms. However, because of that, they couldn't make enemies on all sides, especially when the opponent was also an end-realm Saint Venerable. They had to be careful and couldn't be careless. Even if it was the 9 extreme death jail, if the enemy had a goal, he wouldn't harm their interests too much. Then, they could just let him do as he wished. They could just close one eye and let it pass. It was okay as long as they didn't say anything. If it was possible, they could even make him owe them a favor. There are very few clues, and I only know a little. I guess that this person should be Liu Hanyin's son. He most probably entered the 9 extreme death jail for his mother. Oh, the jade door opened with a loud rumble. A young man in a purple golden robe with a handsome face, red lips, and white teeth stepped out from inside the hall. His expression was cold and solemn as he looked at the red-robed old man standing outside the hall. Hanyin's son, are you joking? Did I judge wrongly? Did he have help, or was he alone? There are a total of 2 people. As for whether or not the other person helped, I don't know. Lu Tianqing smiled faintly and said indifferently, "However, isn't the sacred venerable a little too ignorant? I heard that Hanyan Sun is now a direct bloodline member of the Liu family. He also obtained the help of Sangyin Hall head Fanjue. If he didn't have any ability, how could he do that? As for whether or not I judged wrongly, I am not sure. I can only guess from some clues. I didn't personally see him, and I'm not sure. I can only say that he is Hanyan's son." Chapter 9:18. As for whether or not I am wrong, I am not sure. I can only guess from some clues. Without personally seeing it, how can I be sure that this person is Hanyan's son? Listening on quietly, the purple-robed, middle-aged man's gaze was like a knife as it swept over. Lu Tianqing only felt like his body was being burnt. His pupils constricted and fear appeared in his eyes. He still maintained his calmness and said flatly, "Saint Venerable can just take a look and you will know. Why do you need to ask me?" No matter what, this person was able to invite an end-realm Saint Venerable to help him. His background is definitely not ordinary. "Saint Venerable, you won't make a trip for nothing." The purple-robed, middle-aged man frowned and scoffed. His expression relaxed slightly. This person is really good at instant space techniques, such that you can't do anything about it? Indeed, he can teleport hundreds of miles of land in an instant. Even Saint Realm cultivators like us can do that. However, the distance is far above, and we use up a lot of energy. However, this person's instant space ability doesn't use up any energy at all. Moreover, looking at his sword techniques, normal initial God Realm experts might not be his match. Apart from that, there should be someone good at formations to help him cover his aura. When he said this, Lu Tianqing smiled. "It isn't that I am helpless, I just need to spend some time. Moreover, since I have already guessed his background, then I just need to wait at Liu Hanyan's place. However, no matter who this person is, this matter is really important. This is why I came to ask Saint Venerable." The purple-robed, middle-aged man nodded and was deep in thought. Thinking about it for a moment, he laughed. "You are really smart. You are really scheming. Forget it. It is okay to waste some time for this person." He said, "That end realm aura is really foreign, but also a little familiar. I'm really curious. Coincidentally, I can also meet him and see which world this person is from, to be able to silently reach the Saint Realm Venerable." When he said this, the numerous layers of space in front of him started to twist and fold. It took Lu Tianqing an entire hour to cross the space. In front of the purple-robed, middle-aged man, the concept of distance didn't exist at all. In just one step, he was outside of the 9 Extreme Death Jail and within the Starfire Dust Formation. His gaze was deep as he looked into the distance. This time, Lin Xuanxuang, who was hidden several dozen worlds away, also sensed something. He suddenly stood up in the Great Heaven Palace. Then, he placed his hand on his forehead and sighed. Why would this person be alarmed? Given his current situation, there was nothing he could do when this person was prepared. She couldn't help but fret. Could it be that she could only pray that her disciple would be safe and sound? Light flashed in her beautiful eyes. From the corner of her eyes, she saw Jingyin beside her. Her face was ashen white and her eyes were closed. Her palms were clasped together and she was mumbling something. Just by listening to a few sentences, he knew that it was a prayer scripture. Lin Xuanxuang immediately laughed coldly. What kind of place is the 9 Extreme Death Prison? Even in your previous life, the power of prophecy might not be useful. What's more, I have yet to awaken the wisdom of my previous life. Jingyin was startled. The expression on her face was even more terrified. Saint Xianshuang, is the beginning and end Buddha in trouble right now? Just now, Jingyin felt her heart jump. I don't know the reason, but I know that it has something to do with the beginning and end Buddha. It might endanger his life, and there are some variables within. Tisk, you haven't awakened your memories, and you have already gathered 80% of your ability. When Lin Xuanxuang heard this, her lips curled up in disdain. His life isn't in danger. It is just a little problematic. No matter what, he is the only disciple that I Lin Xuanxuang like in my life. If I didn't have full confidence, Why would I let him die in the death jail? Jingyin's face was filled with doubt and disbelief. She had already experienced how unreliable this Xian Shuang was. How would one dig a hole to harm others? Till today, each time she thought about what happened that day, she would have a certain desire. She really wanted to strangle this Xian Shuang to death. It came from her instincts, and there were several times when she nearly couldn't control herself. Lin Xuanchuang didn't notice at all. When she saw Jingyin's expression, she was even more annoyed. Do you know about the Liu family's marrow-burning blood spirit curse? Marrow-burning blood spirit? Jingyin's brow rose up. Why hadn't she heard about it? Recently, Zhongshou seemed to have been tortured by this curse technique. That day when he was in trouble, he fled to Songling World because of it. The Liu family's 9 extreme death jail technique is similar to the marrow-burning blood spirit curse, pretty much coming from the same source. Apart from that, there are close to 3,000 Liu family disciples who die in the death jail. A large portion of the blood essence soul will be absorbed by the death jail restriction formation. At this moment, Zhongshou has the blood spirit curse on him. When she said this, Lin Xuanchuang felt that it wasn't right and shook her head. Why am I telling you all this? Even if I told you, you wouldn't understand. You only need to know that although he is in danger, but in this desperate situation, there is still a ray of hope. Who knows, he might be able to grasp the sky-burning Liu family's strongest bloodline. Although she said that, her heart was filled with uncertainty. How tough would it be to push the sky-burning blood to the highest level? Zhongshou's journey in the 9 extreme death jail would be much tougher than others. It was already really rare that he didn't die or go crazy. She couldn't help but think about whether or not she should ask a helper to call Zhongshou's other master over. With the two of them here, that person over there wouldn't dare to be rash. At the same time, within the 9 extreme death jail was Zhongshou, who was teleporting. Suddenly, he frowned and looked at the sky. This place was still on the 6th layer, a world covered in ice and snow, known as the Ice Wheel Death Jail. Power spread all over, and cold energy spread about. Similarly, at noon, that was when the forbidden technique would take effect. Endless cold seeped into one's body, like there were numerous ice wheels cutting and grinding in one's soul. It directly attacked one's soul. In terms of pain, it was above the 5th layer. When Zhongshou thought about it once, his entire consciousness was frozen and he had no ability to think at all. What annoyed him the most wasn't the pain in his soul. To him, this torture wasn't much stronger than the marrow-burning blood spirit curse. However, when the forbidden technique touched his body, what entered his body was ice-cold power. However, it also triggered the blood spirit power, causing the vital energy to flow backward and enter his eyes. The blood essence in his bone marrow was burning. Although the surroundings were filled with power, it was useless against him. Even the Ice Wheel Forbidden technique seemed to have weakened by a lot. This vital energy flow has something to do with the forbidden technique of the 9 extreme death jail. The first time in the 1,000-knife death jail, it was triggered by this. Apart from the time Hanshi swallowed those mutated beast pellets and gave back foreign essence energy. Each time it was triggered by the forbidden technique. Zhongshou could roughly feel that he had touched a little of the meridians of the vital energy flow. However, he still didn't know where the blood spirit power came from. Chapter 920. A lot of the marrow-burning blood spirit curse power was consumed when Zhongshou stepped into the celestial realm. Originally, if nothing unexpected happened, all of the curse power would completely disappear within 3 to 5 months. However, the moment he entered the death jail, the marrow-burning blood spirit curse changed once more, becoming stronger and stronger each time. Speaking of which, the blood spirit curse power was first strengthened in the 1,000-knife death jail. Only the layer caused by Hanshi didn't increase. Could it be that it was also because of this forbidden technique? Was this blood spirit curse power related to the forbidden technique in the 9 extreme death jail? Zhongshou thought about it for a moment and then shook his head. He had a rough guess, but he was unable to confirm it. He thought to himself, that after exiting the 9 Extreme Death Jail, he had to find a top-secret technique that could deal with the energy meridians. With such a technique, why would he need to be afraid that he wouldn't be able to find the source of the Blood Spirit curse power? Moreover, at this time, how would he have the time to think about the reason why the vital energy was flowing in the opposite direction? Looking at the sky, Zhongsho's face was alternating between green and white. Just now, he felt his heart palpitate. His heart and chest couldn't calm down. His temples were also twitching. It was an obvious heart wave reaction, a warning sign. He didn't know what happened outside the death jail. Most probably that extreme flame Saint Venerable has been alerted. Beside him, Lu Wubing also smiled bitterly. He was obviously the same as Zhongsho and felt danger. I was careless. I deserved to die, causing Ruler to be in danger. Luckily, with Xian Shuang's Saint Venerable outside, extreme flame won't easily attack Ruler. Although he said that, Zhongsho didn't see any anxiousness from his expression. He was still really calm, like he didn't care at all, and was really confident. Zhongsho looked deeply at Lu Wubing, unable to make a judgment. Did Lu Wubing do it on purpose for him to be in such a desperate situation? A few breaths later, he calmly activated the star Dao Seed once more. At this moment, it was useless to say anything. It was also useless to regret and blame. It was precisely because of the imminent danger that he wanted to reach the 8th floor of the 9 Extreme Death Prison as quickly as possible, even if he was in a desperate situation this time. So before he died, he had to see his poor mother one last time. There were only 2 entrances to the 7th floor, located in the north and south. The holy fire silver ants spread out over thousands of miles. About 2 hours later, Zhongsho's heart twitched. It was Hanshi. It had found the entrance to the south. He imprinted a scene thousands of miles away into the depths of his soul. Similar to the 5th floor, there were over 100 stone platforms and a tall tower guarding it. However, Zhongsho's heart sank when he saw the cultivators sealed on the platform. They were all mid-celestial realm and above. 3 to 5 of them had strong auras and were hiding to the late celestial realm. These were not enough to make him afraid. However, that tall tower was clearly the divine sense of a true deity realm expert. If the 6th floor was like this, then what would the 7th floor be like? It seemed to sense the soldier ant that was spying thousands of miles away. There was a cold scoff from within the black tower, and a fiery red blade, Shadow, slashed over. Luckily, that soldier ant was extremely quick. In the moment of life and death, it flashed several miles away. That was why it wasn't killed by that person. However, the divine sense that was transmitted back was really weak. Zhongsho's brow rose up. Using the star Dao seeds scattered there, he teleported the soldier ant hundreds of miles away. At this moment, he felt intense pain in his spiritual sense. Threads of cold energy entered his body. Without needing to think, Zhongsho knew that this was the Ice Will Soul twisting technique acting up once more. In other words, it would attack once every 12 hours. Not long after he entered the 6th floor, he had experienced it once. Now it was noon. Zhongsho took in a deep breath and closed his eyes. He didn't block off his nerves and meridians to cut off the feeling of pain. Instead, he used the illusionary heart mirror to replace his vision. His body flashed, and in just a few minutes, he arrived at the entrance of the space. At this moment, the vital energy in his body was flowing in reverse. It was at its peak. The pain in his body and eyes was getting more and more intense. Zhongsho didn't have any intentions of stopping to rest. Just as he arrived, he charged towards the entrance of the abyss. He already knew about Zhong Weiran. The God Realm cultivators here might know more. However, it wasn't the time to capture and interrogate him. At this moment, on the hundreds of stone platforms, the eyes of all the celestial cultivators turned red. However, all of them were unable to attack. Zhongsho's 79-star Dao seed strolled dozens of miles of space. His body directly turned illusionary as he teleported in the air. These celestial cultivators were unable to lock onto him, just as Zhongsho was about to charge into the abyss. A maniacal laugh spread out from the tall tower. Is this space technique again? 2 years ago, my predecessor was caught off guard and was killed. He successfully passed. You kid, you don't have such good luck. If you escape, how am I different from that piece of trash? Along with the voice, a person suddenly appeared below Zhong Shou. It was the entrance of the space abyss. Scarlet flames burned wildly within several thousand feet of this place, causing space and laws to distort. It covered the space abyss. Even the star Tao seeds that Zhong Shou spread out were burned and repelled outside. The soul that was split within also gave out a feeling of pain. It was a sign that his mind was damaged. Zhong Shou's eyes squinted. That person from 2 years ago, using the space technique to kill his predecessor? But Zhong Weiran? In other words, Zhong Weiran wasn't within the 6th layer. As expected, how would his father be stopped here? He didn't think much about it. Zhong Shou retracted his thoughts. Using the illusionary heart mirror, he saw a blade light that could fill up heaven and earth swiftly slash over. Zhong Shou didn't block. A turtle appeared in his sleeves. He raised up the giant shield and heard a loud clang. The blue fire Xian turtle retreated slightly, and then its expression became slightly dispirited. A God Realm expert's blade was something that even had a block. Zhong Shou stood on the turtle's back and didn't move. However, a silver blade light slid out from his sleeves. It was light like it had no strength at all. It didn't seem quick, but in the blink of an eye, it was in front of the God Realm expert. That person laughed coldly. However, in just a thousandth of a second, his eyes were filled with fear. He looked towards Zhong Shou in shock. The latter's eyes were half closed. Only his mind was more focused. Time, speed up, space stack, cause and effect invert, fate lock, life and death reverse, lifespan burn. In just a breath, 10 years of lifespan was burned up. It also caused the power of that blade power to increase by 3 times. That person looked at Zhong Shou and a blood flower exploded out from his brow. The silver blade light pierced his brain. His face was still filled with disbelief. Chapter 921. 3 days later, Zhong Shou's back was covered in sweat as he walked on a blue ocean that was surging with waves. The 7th layer was known as the Spirit Ocean Death Jail. Looking out, one could only see blue ocean water. It made one's heart open up. However, the blue and pure water was filled with poison. Apart from that, this world also twisted all sorts of laws. When one walked on the ocean surface, there would be magnetism thousands of times stronger than normal. Not only did one's body have to bear thousands of times more pressure than before, even the items hidden in the heaven and earth bag couldn't escape. It caused one to face the danger of falling into the ocean at every moment, with no place to rest at all. The restrictions here were different from the previous few layers. It was wind. The bone-chilling wind was endless and didn't stop at all. Not only did it cause huge waves on the blue ocean, it was also filled with power that seeped into the depths of one's bones. Not only was it as painful as the ice wall punishment, but if one didn't block it, it would cause one's vital energy and essence to rot and destroy, stealing one's lifespan. Just a day ago, Zhong Shou personally saw an intermediate celestial realm cultivator fall into the ocean when he couldn't take it anymore. In just 60 breaths, there was nothing left of him, not even a drop of blood. Who knew what kind of poison was in the ocean, such that even a celestial realm cultivator couldn't block it? At this moment, Zhong Shou was extremely tired and sweating profusely. Every 100 miles, he would have to stop to catch his breath. The Yin wind was endless, causing the vital energy in his body to flow in reverse, not stopping at all. Who knew how long he would have to hold on for before it would end? Everything that could be thrown away in his heaven and earth bag was already cleared. However, his body still felt like it was filled with lead, extremely heavy. At this moment, he could still hold on, but he wished that he could directly fall into the ocean and just die. Actually, if he used the blue fire Xian turtle instead of walking, it would be much easier. However, it was a little inconvenient to teleport and instead increase the burden. On the contrary, Lu Wubbing's situation was much better than Zhong Shou's. His aura was flowing smoothly, and one couldn't see his expression from a mask. However, his eyes were filled with worry. Maybe because Zhongsho was reaching his limit, he persuaded, "Ruler, why do you have to do this? That extreme flame, Saint Venerable, probably already knows where we are." No matter how hurried he was, it was useless. The 8th level is dangerous, so why don't we stop and rest for a while to recover before making plans? Zhongsho snorted, his expression indifferent. How would he not know what Lu Wubing said? At this very moment, there was a thought so strong that it made Zhongsho want to bow down and worship penetrating his soul. It was a divine sense pressure that was even more strenuous than the magnetic force of this world. It was Xian flames. He was somewhere in the death jail, or even outside the 9 extreme death jail. He was looking down coldly and didn't try to hide at all. However, just the pressure that this thread of spiritual remembrance brought was already difficult for him to endure. That person didn't seem like he wanted to attack him, but he was still high up and was mocking him. It gave one a feeling like an extremely noble ruler was looking at a mouse that was slithering in front of him. A mouse that he was slightly interested in. He didn't have any killing intent and didn't retract that soul suppression. It brought with it a bone-chilling coldness that quietly pressed over. However, it nearly caused him to be unable to take it. Maybe this person was waiting to see when he would collapse and when he would be tossed into the ocean to be like the person from before, his corpse and soul disappearing. There was also a faint sense of oppression that wanted to make him bow down and kowtow. It was like he was saying that as long as Zhongsho admitted his mistake, he would be let off. "It is okay." Taking in a deep breath, Zhongsho smiled brightly. Maybe he was really used to it, or maybe he was distracted. The marrow, burning blood spirit curse, and the pain of vital energy flowing backwards couldn't affect his mind anymore. Under this suppression, there was an unprecedented, vengeful energy in his chest. For some reason, he wasn't willing to lose face in front of this person and become a joke. He also didn't know that he was actually so stubborn in his bones. To put it nicely, he was stubborn and strong. To put it bluntly, he was asking to die. However, since he was already in such a desperate situation, why did he need to lower his head to this person? Seemingly sensing Zhongsho's thoughts, that end-realm spiritual remembrance suddenly became stronger. Zhongsho's body shook and he stumbled, nearly falling into the ocean. A moment later, he finally managed to hold on. Lu Wubing didn't notice at all. His eyes were filled with shock. Why did it reach such a level? At this moment, he also knew that Zhongsho's body situation was weird. He was most probably affected by the marrow-burning blood spirit curse. However, with Zhongsho's thick foundations, how could he reach such a stage where he was about to collapse? Zhongsho didn't bother. The moment the spiritual sense pressed down, his bones cracked. All the bones in his body let out a series of explosive sounds. His soul remembrance was almost crushed, but he still managed to hold on. Then, he withstood the enormous pressure and took another step forward. The heaven and earth in front of him changed once more. He could see that there was a giant whirlpool spinning in the clouds, covering thousands of miles of land. He was surrounded by a raging storm. Countless lightning bolts were flashing within the storm. This is the nether jail gate you were talking about. The 7th layer was the Spirit Ocean Death Jail, with 2 entrances. As for the abyss of time and space between the 7th and 8th levels, there was only one, and the location did not shift. It was right in the middle of the Spirit Ocean. With Zhongsho's Star Dao Seed and instant space ability, he was able to reach the nether jail gate. It took him more than 3 days to get here. However, just as he felt like he couldn't hold on anymore, he finally saw the entrance to the 8th layer. Lu Wubing didn't reply. His expression was dim. Zhongsho understood and knew that he was sad about the death of his parents. Thinking about it for a moment, he said flatly, "You can stay here. You don't have to follow. If I die, you can find a way out yourself. If I am lucky enough to break out, I will help you out." After he finished speaking, he tossed a jade plate over from afar. This was a space magical treasure that he had obtained in the Songling world. It was only slightly stronger than the Lingjie ring and was far from the celestial treasure Juntian Palace that he got from a God Realm cultivator. However, at this moment, there were hundreds of celestial realm experts hidden within. They were all sealed up and hidden within this jade plate. The celestial realm cultivators within needed someone to suppress them. Once they entered the 8th layer, Zhongshou might not be able to take care of them all. Why not pass it to Lu Wubbing? With his cultivation that was close to God Realm, he would be fine. Lu Wubbing was stunned. He knew that his cultivation wasn't enough, and if he followed, he would only be a burden. Thus, he didn't reject and took the jade plate. Understand, I will definitely not disappoint Junshang's trust. Chapter 922. I understand. I won't let you down. The moment the jade plate entered his hand, it shook slightly. Zhongshou's expression became much more relaxed. Suppressing the jade plate did use up a lot of his strength. Lu Wubbing's brow furrowed, and he clenched his fist to stop the jade plate from collapsing. The hundreds of celestial realm cultivators weren't all willing. There were some who agreed to leave the stone platform and break the chains. Actually, they didn't believe that Zhongshou could escape the death jail. At this moment, they were also struggling. Luckily, the restrictions that he helped Zhongshou to lay down were strong enough and could be maintained. However, at most, I only have half a month. If he went all out, he would only be able to suppress the plate for half a month. He carefully kept the jade plate into his sleeves. Lu Wubbing said, "There are 6 God Realm green lightning eagles guarding this place. They were the protector spirit beasts of the Lu family, Saint Realm old ancestor. Back then, my parents died here. Ruler needs to be careful." Zhongshou's eyes flashed as he looked at the intense storm in the distance. One could vaguely see streaks of cyan light shuttling back and forth in the storm. They brought with them extremely strong magnetic storms and numerous lightning currents. The Thunder Eagle was one of the descendants of the Thunder One. Looking at the 6 Thunder Eagles, looking at the 6 Lightning Eagles, the ability that power grasped was far from that of a god beast. In this place where the wind and lightning rampaged, his combat strength would be close to double. To break through here was indeed not a normal level of danger. Especially under the current situation where he was distracted by his body, he was unable to go all out. Frowning, Zhongshou shook his head. Was he going to stop now that he knew how difficult it was? At this point, there was no way out, and so was his chance of survival. Since he didn't fear death, then there was nothing to fear in this 9 extreme death jail. A pair of black lightning wings spread out behind his back. Lightning blaze, thousand flash, lightning and fire mixed together. A pair of black wings each stretched 70,000 feet. With a slight flap, it brought Zhongshou up into the sky. At the start, it was only 1,000 times the gravity. The magnetism power would increase by 10%. By the time they reached a height of 70,000 feet, the gravity had already increased by over 7,000 times. The bones and joints in Zhongshou's body started to creak out. Fortunately, his body refinement technique was successful, and his physical body was only weaker than deity realm cultivators. At this moment, he was still able to hold on. However, the keen and violent wind above was getting stronger and stronger, slicing into his body. It caused the marrow-burning blood spirit curse power to become stronger and stronger. His entire body seemed to have spontaneously combusted. As soon as they entered the storm, the 6 lightning eagles were startled. Immediately, one of them charged out and crashed into the ground. Zhongshou's expression did not change. His momentum did not falter. 37 Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth swords scattered around him. Then, beams of sword light, which looked like the Milky Way hanging upside down, followed by Zhongshou's figure. It destroyed everything, smashed everything, and rushed up. Bolts of lightning suddenly exploded. He wanted to see if it was the same lightning-attributed energy. He who had the Lightning Phoenix ability, as well as the 7-star mysterious lightning ability. Compared to these lightning eagles, who was stronger and who was weaker? Instantly, he clashed with that lightning eagle. First, lightning flashed. The entire void rang out with a loud rumble that shook thousands of miles. Next, the sword light collided with the body of the viridescent Thunderhawk. Thousands of sword lights clashed with the iron feathers, bird beak, and eagle claws. In just a moment, the lightning eagle gave out a tragic cry. A ball of blood exploded out from the left wing. At the crucial moment, it turned into a lightning glow and retreated dozens of miles away. The other few lightning eagles all roared out in rage. They stopped looking on as they all pounced down. Zhongsho's expression was really serious. He used the lightning wings to fly in the air, going up against the magnetism power. Clumps of sword shadows continued to slash at the ball of green lightning in front of them. It seemed like they wanted to continue to chase and slay that lightning eagle under their swords. However, just as the other few charged over anxiously, his body flashed. When he was dozens of miles away, he teleported once more and was at the side of the nether jail gate. It was the Star Dao Seed, the instant space teleportation ability. He was too lazy to bother about the few giant birds that were crying out in rage behind him. Zhongsho took a step forwards and wanted to directly enter the 8th layer of the death jail. However, just as he was about to step in, a tyrannical pressure suddenly came from the distant void. A scoff spread into his ear. "You are all useless fools." Who knows if he was talking about Zhongsho or scolding those lightning eagles. Lu Juyan. Zhongsho's face was ashen white. He himself didn't feel anything weird in his body. Juyan didn't seem to want to directly attack him. However, the space abyss of the 8th layer was forcefully locked down. It caused him to be unable to step in at all. Those 6 lightning phoenixes cried out once more. It was like they were enraged out of humiliation, bringing with them balls of lightning as they charged towards where he was standing. Zhongsho's thoughts only lasted for a moment before he woke up from his disappointment and unwillingness. Then, he laughed instead of being angry. Did he want to use the strength of the 6 lightning eagles to force him back or kill him? Forget it. Let's just follow what this Saint Venerable said. Let's fight to the death with these 6 lightning eagles. Who knows how long this Saint Venerable could lock down this nether jail abyss gate. The restrictions of the 9 worlds were connected and coexisted with one another. If they weren't connected, they would definitely break apart. That was exactly what he wanted. He slashed down with his sword, and a full 5 different long phoenixes appeared behind him. They coiled around the sword, and then merged into one. Platinum Dragon Sword, Lightning Dragon Sword, Mysterious Dragon Sword, Flame Dragon Vast Sword, Instant Space Dragon Sword, Slash, 9 True Dragon Sword Technique. Zhongsho could stack 9 swords and merge 7 swords. However, he couldn't merge more than 4 swords into one. However, at this moment, when he was in danger and was suppressed by the end realm spiritual sense, without thinking, he slashed out and forcefully merged the 5 swords into one. The sword attack was flawless and extremely sharp. The lightning eagle that smashed over felt danger right away, fear appearing in its eyes. Without hesitation, it turned around to try to escape from the sword attack. However, this sword light, that was like the incarnation of an absolute beginning giant dragon, wasn't restricted by space at all. The sword energy swept across. Even if the lightning eagle dodged in time, one of its wings was broken along with a small part of its body. Like a shooting star, it fell towards the storm. Zhongsho didn't look, closing his eyes and using the illusionary heart mirror to look at the world. That blood-colored sword shadow didn't stop as it turned around and slashed. Icehorn Dragon Sword, Wind Cloud Dragon Sword, Flame Dragon Vast Sword, Instant Space Dragon Sword, Lightning Dragon Sword. Another one. 5 swords merged into one. 3,000 miles of wind and clouds stirred. The water in the space was frozen into ice. Intense lightning gathered on the sword. Sky burning flame, lightning blaze, thousand flash, shattering the world, shattering the Tao. Instant Space Dragon Sword slashed through the air. With a light puff, the lightning eagle that smashed over had its head sliced off by this sword. Chapter 923. The lightning liquid exploded, and a large half of the lightning phoenix's body was teleported thousands of feet away by an external force. Then, its body was reconstructed, and it returned to normal in just a breath. However, it looked dispirited and weak. Zhongsho's sword not only broke its head, but also injected threads of energy and sword energy, as well as Zhongsho's martial path true intent into its body. This was why even if this lightning eagle borrowed the strength of others to avoid death, it was still heavily injured and wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time. Zhongsho's brows rose up, thinking to himself, what was this? Couldn't help but attack? Was it biased? Or was it unwilling to let these few God Realm lightning eagles be killed by him? He was too lazy to think about it. Since he could kill them once, then he could kill them a second time. A third time, what did he have to fear? His mind and intent weren't affected at all. Then, the third sword slashed across the sky. It was still 5 swords merged into one, but the sword aura was more complete and flawless. The absolute beginning long ing that appeared on the sword was covered in scales and armor, looking real and lifelike. When the sword light flashed, all of the green lightning was swept away. The 4 lightning eagles flapped their wings and dodged in a maniacal manner. They didn't seem to be able to suppress heaven and earth like before. Zhongsho laughed, filled with a mocking intent. His body used the 79-star Tao seeds to teleport through the air. With just one flash, he was in front of one of the lightning eagles. It was still one, but it was one of the 49 Dia numbers that had escaped. It was really sudden, and without any signs, the sword exploded in the air. With a pula, the entire 100 miles of land pretty much stopped. The space seemed to be ripped apart by the black flames on the sword. Where the black light passed, the green lightning eagle under Zhongsho's body was sliced open from the middle by a sword. Before the sword attack was able to rip apart the physical body and soul of the beast, it was already too late. Just like that, another strange force moved the green lightning eagle and reconstructed its body. However, this time a cold scoff spread out from the void. Arrogant. The voice was ice cold, causing one's blood to freeze. 6 talismans suddenly charged down from the sky and shot into the bodies of the giant lightning eagles. It caused the aura of the 6 lightning eagles to explode. Red and white flames burned crazily. Their beaks, iron claws, and even their iron feathers were filled with sharp energy. Zhongsho used the Dragon Pellet Tao Seed to flash a few times in the air and change his position. Frowning slightly, Xiaoqin immediately felt the pressure from the 6 Thunder Eagles increase exponentially. Not only did his Imperial Wind and Imperial Lightning ability increase, his speed had also increased by more than 2 times. He could also use the sky burning of the world of the Lightning Eagle. The 6 lightning eagles of the lightning eagle were show of the lightning. At this moment, he of the lightning eagle of the lightning eagle, of the marrow of the blood, of the blood of the curse to the peak. Threads of fresh blood seeped out from the corners of his eyes. Above it, Zhongsho was extremely annoyed. This extreme pain, these 6 annoying lightning eagles. It caused his mood to be really restless and uneasy. He wanted to smash the sky into pieces and level the land. Only then would he be able to be at ease and have some peace. However, in his heart, he knew that he couldn't have such an annoyed mood. Taking in a few deep breaths, Zhongsho forced himself to stop thinking. Nameless in his hand followed a weird sword path as it slashed through the air. The sword clashed with the claws and teeth of the lightning eagle, causing the lightning blaze 1,000 flash to clash with the sky-burning flame of the 6 lightning eagles. In an instant, there were thousands of strikes. Wind and fire gathered, filling up the storm. The aura of the 6 lightning eagles was getting stronger and stronger. Zhongsho's mind slowly calmed down. The series of intense battles caused him to be more focused than ever before. He finally forgot about the pain in his body. He didn't even bother about the 6 lightning eagles that pounced over. There was only the sword in his mind, and he was extremely focused on the sword. Standing proudly beside the nether jail, Zhongsho didn't teleport anymore. He just waved the sword intent in his hand to go up against the seemingly endless lightning and firepower. One Originine, within 100 feet, it was his unbreakable sword domain. The entire 3,000-mile region was filled with endless storms. Only the 100 feet around Zong Shou slowly calmed down. There was no wind, no lightning flashing. It was no different from a normal place. That sword merger wasn't limited to the 9-9 long Ing sword. Cause and effect laws, life and death laws, fate laws, various Daos, 79-star Dao seeds, 37 Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth swords could all be merged into it. At the start, he was still shaky, but as time went on, he became more and more familiar with it. He casually touched it, and it was really easy, totally merging into the one Originine sword. Slowly, each sword that Zong Shou slashed out caused the 6 lightning eagles to cry out in shock as they dodged. Each sword that slashed down would cause numerous eagle feathers to fall. Who knows how long they had been in the eye of the storm? Who knows how many times they had clashed with one another? That 100 feet unbreakable sword domain was crazily expanding. 1,000 feet, 10,000 feet. When it reached 7,399 feet, Zong Shou's eyes suddenly opened. Numerous runes flashed and jumped in his blood eyes. He looked into the distance quietly. Even if they went all out, they were still unable to break through the sword domain. The flames slowly dissipated and the 6 lightning eagles were in a really bad state. At this moment, he only felt that it was a waste. If these lightning eagles could hold on for a little longer, his sword technique would definitely have a breakthrough. When the unbreakable sword domain covered 100,000 feet, there was even a 100% chance that he could step into the intermediate sword intense spirit realm. Unfortunately, looking at the situation, their auras were obviously much weaker. The effects of the talisman were already fading. The sky-burning sword that was burning slowly dimmed. It was obvious that it was getting weaker and weaker. Is it activating potential essence energy? That Saint Venerable is so stingy. When their potential was used up, their life essence was slowly running out. Naturally, they couldn't continue anymore. Even if there were still talismans landing, it wasn't enough to support these 6 lightning eagles to fight with him. However, I really don't know whether or not I should thank my sky-burning blood. If it wasn't for the sky-burning bloodline, if it wasn't for the 9 extreme death jail, even if he had the ability to go up against God Realm experts, he wouldn't be able to go up against these 6 lightning phoenixes. Even if his sword technique was really high, he wouldn't be able to support them. Spreading out his spiritual sense, Zong Shou noticed that the Nether Jail Abyss Gate had returned to normal. The weird power that locked down the gate was nowhere to be seen. Only the spiritual sense suppression was still the same. Since that is the case, then it is time to end it. His spiritual sense wasn't pure, and he couldn't focus on the sword anymore. Zong Shou felt that the pain that he couldn't bear struck his eyes. It suddenly exploded out, and he couldn't help but want to cry out in pain. Then, he broke out into a laugh. Zong Shou waved his sleeves, and 6 knife lights shot out. Shuttling through the void, the 6 gods' flying daggers instantly pierced through the heads of the 6 giant birds that were fleeing in fear in the distance. When the bloodlight exploded out, Zong Shou's body totally disappeared from the Nether Jail Gate. Chapter 924. At this moment, outside of the 9 extreme death jail, within the Starfire Dust Formation, Lu Jian stood with his arms behind his back. His expression was really weird. He was a little angry, a little shocked, and also a little teasing. However, most of it was surprise. Lu Tianqing stood respectfully at the side and didn't speak. This extreme flame, Saint Venerable, was in his eyes. However, such a person didn't show his emotions on his face. If one wanted to use that to judge what he was thinking, one would be wrong. After keeping silent for a long while, Lu Jian suddenly burst out laughing. Tianqing, what do you think about this kid? Lu Tianqing thought about it for a moment, considering his words before asking. He is proud and has an unyielding will. This kid will definitely be unforgiving. Normal methods won't be able to shake his will. Unyielding? That evaluation is quite accurate. Lu Jian nodded slightly. A weird glow flashed in his eyes. He knew that the junior beside him was trying to say something. His will was firm. In other words, their sky-burning Lu family probably wouldn't be able to wipe away the hatred in his heart. Even if they forcefully closed it, they wouldn't be able to remove the cracks. They had to consider the risks within. Lu Jian did not comment, acting like he did not understand the meaning behind those words. He smiled faintly. However, what I'm asking about isn't his personality, but his ability. He didn't collapse under such pressure and instead used it to train his sword path martial intent to improve his sword technique. This kid is really... Although he looked like he was in his 20s, calling himself an old man didn't sound right at all. It was like he couldn't find any words to evaluate him. Lu Jian thought about it for a moment before speaking once more. He's a top swordsman. I actually saw the secrets of the Tao on his body. In the future, it would be easy for him to reach the end realm. This kind of junior was definitely not a piece of trash. I remember that when he was born, there were people to report back. He is a dual meridian body, a remnant soul body? Lu Tianqing's eyes shone, and then he bowed. That's right. In Tianqing's opinion, there is no one in the same generation in the Lu clan who can compare to him. This Zhong Shou was not only not a piece of trash, but also a peerless talent. In his impression, there were not many people in this region who could be mentioned in the same breath as him in the past 1,000 years. There would be 1 or 2 peerless geniuses every 1,000 years. However, this Zhong Shou had the Lu family sky burning blood. Therefore, to them, the significance was different, as expected of a Saint Emperor's descendant. If that person knew about this, he would definitely be overjoyed. The lineage of Origin Flame has a successor. His words seemed to be praising, but when Lu Jian heard it, he shook his head and directly asked, "Are you trying to remind me that if this kid returns, would the Yinyuan bloodline be the strongest?" "Brat, don't try to be smart." Lu Tianqing's expression changed and his lips turned pale. He could vaguely feel that the scorching flame was directly piercing his soul. However, he gritted his teeth and did not beg for mercy. He remained silent. Lu Jian only glanced at him and didn't care. This old man has observed this child's situation. He had clearly awakened the nine-tailed sky, fox bloodline, and merged the 2 bloodlines into one. All right, a few days ago, the person who charged into the death jail alone was Hanyan's husband. In just 20 years, a God Realm cultivator is also a 9-tailed sky fox. That child Han, Yin really has good eyesight. Speaking of which, she didn't do anything wrong and instead did something good. Lu Tianqing's brow furrowed, and he hesitated for a moment. In the end, he opened his mouth. However, this is an exception. Our Lu family sky-burning bloodline is already tough to maintain. In recent years, no End Realm Saint Venerables appeared to purify the bloodline. If everyone was like her and did whatever she wanted, I'm afraid my Lu clan will fall apart within 3,000 years. Be it the God-Beast bloodline or their Lu family sky-burning bloodline, they would all become diluted as time passed. Unless one's cultivation reached a certain realm, one would be able to purify it. Or if someone advanced to the sky-burning bloodline, only by tracing the bloodline power back could one benefit the entire race. However, 7,000 years ago, the sky-burning bloodline had reached the extreme. Even a new Saint Realm cultivators of the Lu family couldn't do anything about it. During these years, they could only barely maintain it. During these few years, it was showing signs of declining. This was why everyone who was listed in the Lu family direct bloodline register was highly valued by the Lu family. As for people like Lu Hanyin, they had high hopes for her. This was also the reason why Lu Hanyin was convicted. Moreover, that day, the few Saint Venerables were the ones who decided on Hanyin's punishment. If we overturn the case now, where will the dignity of the Lu family disciplinary hall and the few Saint Venerables go? That makes sense. Lu Jian's expression didn't change at all. Instead, he asked, "Who are you speaking for? Which country ruler and hall venerables of our Lu family made you help them so much? What is the reason?" His tone was really calm, but it was really sharp. For someone like him, there was no need for him to scheme against others. nor did he need to waste his energy. He could just go straight to the point. In this world, there were very few things that could be hidden from him. No one dared to hide anything from him. His country, ruler Xianhua. Lu Tianxing's face was ashen white, but he didn't hide anything. Saint Venerable doesn't know that 10 years ago, my eldest grandson and country ruler Xuanhua's daughter were engaged. Today, the wedding can be completed. 20 years ago, country ruler Xianhua was the Lu family disciplinary hall venerate. Seeing that Lu Jian didn't have any intentions, instead, he retracted the suppressive intent. He instantly heaved a sigh of relief and then opened his mouth. Although I have selfish intentions, my words are also fair. I don't dare to have any disrespectful thoughts towards Saint Venerable. Saint Venerable, please judge clearly. You indeed don't dare. Lu Jian waved his sleeves and didn't care at all. His spiritual sense seemed to be focused on the death jail, which had crossed the abyss gate and reached the 8th layer. His lips curled up. "What a stubborn kid. How interesting. Then, in your opinion, how should we deal with this kid?" Lu Tianxing raised his head when he heard this, and then his expression calmed down once more. After all, this person is the descendant of Yinyuan's Saint Venerable. For the stability of our Lu family, we can't let him die in our hands. We also can't let him wander outside. Let's just leave him the 8th layer and not bother about him. His tone was totally calm, but it was filled with a bone-chilling cold intent. The 8th layer, Nether Death Jail, was 100 times more dangerous than the Spirit Ocean Death Jail and took away one's life essence. Even if that kid could hold on, 200 years later, he would turn into a pile of bones. Not bother about him? Then, we will do as you say. Lu Jian laughed like he agreed with what Lu Tianxing said. His gaze was filled with deep meaning. However, you need to know that there is a situation that even I can't do anything about. At that time, you will have to bear the consequences. Lu Tianxing was startled and didn't understand what he meant. Then he shook his head. All of a sudden, he didn't understand why Lu Jian said those words. However, since this extreme flame, Saint Venerable had already agreed to it, then the matter of his in-laws would have no future problems. To be continued. Chapter 925. If there are any accidents, I am naturally willing to take responsibility. Thinking about it, what Lu Jian said was something that even an end-realm Saint Venerable like him couldn't do anything about. It was just other end realms helping to save Zhongshou from the death jail. With the talent that this kid showed and the fact that he had end realm cultivators helping him, that wasn't impossible. However, at that time, so what if he had to take responsibility for what he did? Looking out at the many positions in the Lu family, there was no position worse than the 9 extreme death jail. Was he going to throw Lu Tianxing into the 9th layer of the death jail that was used to restrain Saint Realm cultivators? As for Zhongshou, just the fact that he colluded with an enemy was enough to prevent him from returning to the Lu family. There definitely wouldn't be any changes to the case that year. Now that someone had insulted them, this extreme flame, Saint Venerable, and even the entire Lu family had to react. Moreover, in this world, there were only a handful of people who could beat Jian and not be afraid of offending the Lu family. Is that so? At that time, you need to remember these words. Lu Jian's lips twitched like he didn't want to continue talking to Lu Tianxing about this matter. He looked down through the void towards the 8th layer. Outside the nether jail abyss gate and the storm, there was an armored person standing there. This person was with Zhongshou, and if it was as expected, he should be his subordinate. A peak celestial realm who was half a step into the saint realm. For some reason, he paid attention to him. Why do I feel that this person's aura is a little familiar? Thinking about it, Lu Jian knew the reason. He then smiled, so it is him. This child had finally escaped from the sea of bitterness, but she had to come running back. Why'd he do that? It seems like he is really stubborn. Lu Tianxing was slightly startled and then came back to his senses. His eyes were slightly dark, and he was deep in thought. It should be Lu Wubing. This kid was sent away by Xuanya country ruler to follow Lu Wushuang, and now he is beside Zhongshou. Did he change sides? I heard that he followed Lu Wushuang to kill enemies, and in the end, Lu Wushuang died to the Buddhist faction. Lu Wubing's whereabouts are unknown. Logically speaking, he should be dead. At this point, his face was already filled with doubt. Lu Wubing didn't die, and instead, he submitted to Zhongshou. Then, was Lu Wushuang's death related to Zhongshou? Soon after, he laughed hoarsely. He was possessed. It didn't matter whether it was related or not. As long as the various country rulers and elders in the Saint dynasty agreed, it would be fine. Killing a member of the direct bloodline was another crime. Lu Wushuang is dead? What a pity. Jian sighed as if he did not understand the meaning behind Lu Tianqing's words. Back then, this old man thought highly of that little fellow. It's really not easy for someone from a branch family to reach such a level. It is indeed a pity. It is said that after Lu Wushuang died, Emperor Xuanye went into seclusion for 10 days and nights. Lu Tianqing nodded slightly, but his eyes were like a poisonous snake as he stared at the person beside the gate of the nether prison. The killing intent in his eyes surged, but he restrained it. Forget it. If he killed him, he would be able to die a quick death. Why not let this kid be tortured in this spirit ocean death jail? It was different from dozens of years ago. Lu Wubing's cultivation was high enough, and he would be able to last for a few more days in this spirit ocean death jail. Thinking about it, Lu Tianqing stopped worrying and said, "Saint Venerable, I am worried about something. This Zhongshou has entered the 8th layer, so do we need to move Lu Hanyin to another place?" Move to another place? Lu Jian turned his head and looked deeply at the red-robed old man behind him. He then shook his head. Since Hanyin gave birth to this kid, the two of them have not met. This method is a little heartless. There is no need for that. Saint Venerable, I am just worried that there will be some unexpected changes. After all, Lu Hanyin is the grandson of that person, the descendant of Yinyuan's Saint Venerable. Who knows what methods he has to help this kid escape? Lu Tianqing wanted to persuade him once more, but Lu Jian waved his hand. There is no need to worry. I'm still hoping for this kid to head to the 9th layer of the death jail. I will deal with this matter. The moment he heard this, Lu Tianqing was at ease. Then, he was filled with questions. Listening to Jian's words, he seemed to be interested in Zhongshou and was looking forward to it. He had been lonely for 10,000 years. He had found a new toy and wasn't willing to let go. He looked at Lu Jian's back in shock. The latter said excitedly, "Who is guarding the entrance to the 9th layer? And that formless shadow demon? This kid has unlimited potential and is just a step away from the sword-intent spirit realm. That shadow demon probably won't be able to block him." While speaking, he split open the space and stepped in. Lu Tianqing's brow rose up. After guarding the death jail for so long, this was the first time he saw Lu Jian so excited. After entering the 8th layer, Zhongshou felt that the name Nether Jail was really fitting. As expected, this place was filled with death energy. Everything one could see was a white scene. If he didn't know that this place was just one of 9 layers of the Lu family death jail. If this place was the Netherworld, Zhongshou would have believed that it was the Netherworld. The moment he stepped in, Zhongshou felt that the true essence in his body started to weaken. Zhongshou didn't hesitate to activate Lin Xuanchuang's Source Life Spirit Breathing technique. His world-shocking spiritual art was slowly being perfected. However, at this moment, it couldn't be compared to this end-realm, endless life technique, which was useful in the Nether Jail. In the end, he felt his body warm up and recover a lot. Not only is the death energy invasion, but it is also stealing life force. One day here consumes 10 days of lifespan. In other words, 20 years was 200 years of lifespan. Zhongshou couldn't help but clench his fists, his fingernails digging deep into his flesh. He forced himself not to think about it and looked around. I wonder what the forbidden technique of this region is. Lu Wubing didn't come to this world, and the outside world can't find out about the situation here. Xian Shuang's master also didn't tell me about it. He thought about it while observing. Moments later, Zhongshou was surprised. The prison realm was a lot smaller than he had imagined. Looking at the sky, This world was less than a tenth of the Spirit Ocean Death Jail. Using the instant space Tao seed, in just 4 to 6 hours, he could go from the south of the sky to the north of the earth. In other words, to search for people in this world was much easier than he had expected. However, since it was called the Nether Jail and was ranked as the 8th layer of the 9 Extreme Death Jail, this place was extremely dangerous. Then, this world should be extremely dangerous. This jail restriction should be stronger than the Spirit Ocean Death Jail. Thinking about that, Zhongsho's heart couldn't help but jump. Anticipation, excitement. His emotions were really complicated. A moment later, he barely suppressed them. He waved his sleeves and wanted to release all the Saint Fire Silver ants. Chapter 926. That's not right. The dangers in this world are unknown, and it's hard to tell what's real and what's fake. If these silver ants spread out, even my Star Dao seed might not be able to protect them. Zhongsho took in a deep breath and then retracted his thoughts of using these Saint Fire Silver ants to explore. Actually, he had already faced many dangers in the 6th and 7th layers. It was also because of Zhongsho's 79 instant space dragon pellets that the silver ants were able to escape and be safe. He still didn't know what the restrictions in this prison were and what mysteries there were. Just the number of people who were imprisoned in this prison was enough to cause fear in one's heart. Based on what Liu Wubbing said, only the most evil people in the Liu family or those who committed unforgivable crimes would be locked up here. Just thinking about it, one would know that there were many experts here. Zhongsho first probed as he stepped into the air. When he reached this place, it was as calm as before. There is no primordial magnetic power, and there are no restrictions in the surroundings. This place doesn't allow people to travel in the void. However, although there were no restrictions here, the spiritual energy here was extremely strong. The laws and Tao laws were really tight, and there were no loopholes to be exploited. In other words, in other worlds, he could instantly travel dozens of miles. In this place, at most he could travel 10 miles. As for the instant space dragon pellet, he could probably only teleport within 100 miles. Also, this death energy was a little too thick. It was like a maggot in one's bones, a thread that wrapped around one's soul. Zhongsho frowned. A 4-foot blood sword slid out from his sleeves. Instantly, large amounts of death energy gathered on the sword. There seemed to be a vast Een river flowing 100,000 feet around him. This was the Styx River Death Sword. The death energy couldn't be dissipated and chased away, so why not use it for himself? He used the death energy to travel forwards without much effort. Roughly 10 minutes later, Zhongsho was startled. In the distance, there were dozens of thousands of feet tall metal frames standing in a neat row in the distance. Within the iron frames, there were a few people pinned onto them. Using the instant space dragon pellet, Zhongsho flashed over. His eyes were filled with shock. The people who were nailed to the metal crosses were all deity realm cultivators. 2 of them had clearly reached the peak of the god realm. Then, he came to a realization. He found it strange. There might be an exit on the 9th floor. Then why would the Liu family center above the god realm be sent to the 8th level of the death jail? Wouldn't it be easier for him to reach the 9th level? Only then did he realize that these people were no longer free range. Instead, he was nailed down and sealed, unable to be free. Looking at the iron frames, it was obvious that they were continuously absorbing the true essence and vital energy of the god realm cultivator and transferring it to other places. Vaguely, it was a branch of a huge spiritual array. Could it be that the forbidden formation of the 9 extreme death prison is maintained by extracting the vital essence and blood of these cultivators? Thinking about it, he felt that something was amiss. Even if there were more than a few hundred mortal state warriors, it would be difficult to support such a large formation. These people should just be supplemental on the dozen or so metal racks. Most of the deity realm cultivators were on the verge of death and extremely weak. Looking at Zhongsho, who flew over, they closed their eyes once more and didn't bother about him. However, There was a rough-looking man with messy hair who sized up Zongsho with a weird look. Then he broke out into a laugh. Weird, weird. I have been trapped in the 8th level of the death jail, and no one has entered for hundreds of years. Who knew that during these 2 years, I would see a few new faces? This fellow shouldn't be over 40, and his cultivation is only at the celestial realm. He was actually able to come down. Could it be that the 6 azure thunder eagles outside have already been roasted and eaten by someone? It was like he was talking to himself, but also like he was talking to the God Realm cultivators on the racks. However, no one replied. Zongsho was really interested in the person in front of him. However, at this moment, he was impatient and wanted to search for Lu Hanyin and Zhong Weiran. He shook his head and was about to leave. However, with a thought, Zongsho stopped. Senior, do you know Lu Hanyin? Lu Hanyin? That brute was stunned and then smiled. I know a little. She is the daughter of the sky-burning Saint Emperor Right, the little princess of the sky-burning Lu family. However, her situation isn't good. Zongsho's eyes flashed, and he continued to ask. Then, do you know where she is now? Peak God Realm, one spiritual sense could cover 10,000 miles. Even in this death jail, it was restricted, but it could still reach thousands of miles. He also had many indiscernible abilities, so this person might know where Lu Hanyin was. Of course, that person instinctively opened his mouth to reply. Then, his eyes were filled with confusion, and he shook his head. I'm not sure. There is nothing that I don't know about this 8th level. I remember her name, but I don't know where she is or if she has been moved to the 9th level. 9th level? Zhong Shaoxin's heart sunk. It was ice cold. Why was she moved to the 9th level? If that was the case, then what should he do? He already found it tough to deal with the green lightning eagles on the 8th level. What was the strength of the person guarding the entrance to the 9th level? Late God Realm or Peak God Realm? Then, he consoled himself that this person didn't know, so his mother might not have been moved to the 9th level. He also felt that something wasn't right. However, he couldn't think of what was wrong. Wu Yazi's eyes were filled with doubt. He didn't care anymore, smiling towards Zongsho. Although your celestial realm, I see that your jade-skinned celestial body is filled with clear energy. Just your physical body is no weaker than God Realm. Since you can enter the 8th level, you must be really skilled. However, to enter the 9th level, you might not be able to do so. Why don't you let me out and I can bring you down? I just don't know if you have the ability to do so. The moment he said this, the cultivators on the iron frames all opened their eyes and looked towards Zongsho. Zongsho's face was really calm, and he wasn't moved by his words. He continued to ask, Then, Senior, have you heard of Zhong Weiran? Where's the person who charged into the nether jail in recent years? When Wu Yazi heard that, he laughed out loud. Naturally, I know. However, I need you to let me out first before I can tell you. Zongsho scoffed and looked closely at the restrictions on the iron frames. In his last life, he had studied the formation path for a period of time to find a chance to break through. However, after coming to this life, as he improved too quickly, maintaining the stability of his foundations exhausted him. This was why he placed this skill down and focused on one path. However, in the cultivation path, if one was good, then all would be good. If one reached the peak of one method, naturally one would be able to comprehend others. Looking at it now, he knew that this restriction was indeed problematic. Not only were the God Realm cultivators on the iron frames finding it difficult to break, even if outsiders wanted to save them, it wouldn't be easy. Chapter 9:27. These giant iron frames were connected to the restrictions of the 9 extreme death jail. To save this person, apart from the restrictions that were tough to break, he would have to suffer the backlash of the death jail restrictions. However, if he really wanted to help, he had some confidence. He just needed to pay a price for it. However, Samuraim's gaze was cold and solemn, expressionless as he looked at the people on the iron frames. Just now when he spoke, Wu Yazi didn't react much, and his reaction was normal. However, the remaining dozen or so people all faintly revealed blank expressions. be it the name Zhong Weiran or the location of the person who entered the 9 extreme death jail. They didn't know anything about it. Since these people didn't know, then how did Wu Yazi find out? This person's words weren't true at all. He risked being heavily injured to let this person out. It was okay if he didn't keep his promise, but if he went against him and killed him, then it would be too late for him to regret. Then, he looked at the countless bones beneath Wu Yazi's metal frame. Most of them were beast bones. Normal beasts couldn't survive in this death jail, so most of them were nether beasts and natural variants. Among them, there were dozens of human bones. Their bones were close to jade, so when they were born, they would have become celestial bodies. Zhong Shoshin instantly became more and more wary. It isn't difficult to break the restrictions. I wonder if Senior is willing to make an oath. Heart Source Oath. I know about the seal and can help you draw the talismans and make the seals. When Wu Yazi heard the first few words, he was delighted. However, when he heard the last 4 words, he went silent. The Heart Source Oath was the most important oath a cultivator could make. The seal would directly enter the soul core. If one couldn't, then it would directly destroy one's foundations. One could forget about keeping one's cultivation in the future. Zhongsho looked at his expression and knew what he was planning. After scoffing coldly, he didn't bother anymore. He still didn't know the details of the 8th layer. If it was as Wu Yazi said, then he needed to save some strength to try to charge into the 9th layer. At this moment, how would he be willing to waste so much effort to save someone who had nothing to do with him and had nefarious intentions? However, just as he was about to use the instant space dragon pellet to tear open space and leave, Wu Yazi laughed. Wu Yazi laughed. I didn't want to use force. But since you don't know what's good for you, then don't blame me. I've been trapped here for hundreds of years. I'm so lonely and lack of food. Looking at your bones and muscles, your chi and blood must be pure and delicious. With you accompanying me, I'm sure my days will be much better. As he spoke, Zhongsho sensed a magnetic force that was tens of thousands of times stronger than before suddenly appearing in the air. Even time and space were temporarily sealed, and Zhongsho's figure was forcefully sucked towards the iron frame. Zhongsho narrowed his eyes and curled his lips in disdain. Just like before, with a thought, the Star Dao seed was activated. With a flash, he moved away from his original position. His cultivation had reached the immortal realm, and Lin Xuanxuang had taught him the source life breathing technique, as well as Tsang Shengdao's myriad Dao ritual Xian Fa Kong 7 words true technique. These instant space dragon pellets were becoming harder and harder to restrict. This Wu Yazi grasped the magnetism technique and also had the ability to seal time and space. To other cultivators, it might be fatal. However, to Zhongsho, it wasn't worth a mention. Breaking away from the magnetic binding, Zhongsho directly teleported 10 miles away and appeared. Wu Yazi was startled when he saw this, and then his expression turned dark and sunken. He knew that he couldn't restrict Zhongsho's movement technique, so there was nothing he could do. He didn't do anything, only scoffing coldly. What an instant space movement technique. No wonder those 6 lightning eagles couldn't stop you. However, the moment he said these words, Zhongsho's face twisted in pain. Wu Yazi's eyes lit up, and then he laughed out loud. So you just enter the nether jail. This technique isn't something that the 7th layer of the Spirit Ocean Death Jail can compare to. Come and accompany me. At this moment, Zhongsho's entire body felt unbearably hot. Energy flowed in reverse. The blood spirit curse power started to activate the sky-burning bloodline once more. His eyes were still filled with pain, but it was 20 to 30% stronger than when he was in the 7th layer. At this moment, what made him feel unbearable and annoyed was within his soul. The ice-cold death power was corroding his soul, as well as the power of the forbidden technique. It nearly froze his soul, like billions of needles stabbing into it, causing pain everywhere. So this 8th layer death jail, forbidden technique, directly attacks the soul. If one doesn't resist, one will slowly go numb, unable to think, and slowly lose consciousness. However, one can still feel this extreme pain. Once one's life energy is used up, one's soul will be destroyed. Even if one can reincarnate, they will be a bug, extremely vicious. However, the forbidden technique wasn't much, just a little stronger than the seventh layer. However, when it acted up in his eyes and soul at the same time, it made him feel so much pain that he wished he was dead. He was close to going crazy, and he felt really annoyed. Coincidentally, at this moment, the magnetism power that Wu Yazi used was 10 miles away and forcefully sucked him in. A giant strength that could rip apart normal God Realm cultivators dragged him towards the iron frame. Zhongsho laughed coldly. He was already annoyed, and now he was even more furious. He was too lazy to dodge, following the suction force and slashing down like a meteor. The underworld river announced his death, and the underworld gate behind him opened. Large amounts of death power surged out. The sword light slashed down, filling up heaven and earth. It was a simple sword, but it had the strength to split heaven and earth into two. Out of the 79 great Tao stars that revolved around it, a quarter of them began to flicker with a faint light. It was one. Tao is one. He merged the various Tao laws he grasped with the Styx River Death Sword into one sword. At the start, Wu Yazi laughed in disdain, but then his expression changed. The magnetism power changed from sucking to pushing. However, it was unable to block and was easily broken apart by the sword shadow. Then, it slashed onto the iron frame, the sword energy and sword formation powers clashing and entering a stalemate. Just as Wu Yazi heaved a sigh of relief, he saw a black flame burn on the sword. It actually pierced through the heavy restrictions and directly slashed into his head, directly splitting it into two. Luckily, at this moment, the power of the restrictions gathered. The person who used the sword still had some rationality left. Before the sword light ended, it retracted and avoided the counterattack of the restrictions. Wu Yazi recovered his head in the blink of an eye. However, his face was ashen white, devoid of blood. He was still in shock as he looked at the teen in front of him with a weird expression. Sword Intent Spirit Realm. What a sharp sword. It wasn't far from the intermediate spirit realm. This kid was actually able to break through the seal. He could go up against God Realm experts and use the Black Flame Death power to increase his combat strength. All of a sudden, he didn't dare to say anything. Although it was painful to be pinned to the iron frame, it was far better than having his soul destroyed. He guessed that this kid didn't just rely on the space movement technique to enter the 8th layer. Those 6 green Thunder Eagles were most likely dead as well. After Zhongsho's sword, he felt his rage dissipate and his heart calm down. To be continued. Chapter 928. After that sword, Zhongsho felt his rage dissipate. His mind calmed down, and he slowly got used to this technique. Moments later, he gave out a self-mocking laugh. So painful that I don't want to die. I actually wish that I could just die right away. At that moment, he really wanted to smash his own head with a finger. Taking in a deep breath, Zhongsho thought back to Lu Hanyan. His mother had lived here for 20 years. Was he unable to take it in such a short amount of time? As for this Wu Yazi, he was really annoying. Killing intent flashed in his eyes as Zhongsho looked towards the iron frame that Wu Yazi was on. With just a single glance, he gave up on the idea of killing him. There was no need to take the risk to break the restrictions. Moreover, letting this person suffer torture was far better than killing him. Sky Burning Flame. So you are a direct bloodline descendant of the Lu family. This voice spread out from another direction. It was really casual and calm. Zhongsho looked out, and his pupils constricted. Where he looked was a scholarly middle-aged man on the iron frame on the right. There were 2 peak God Realm experts here, and Wu Yazi was one of them. The person in front of him was the other. You are so young, and your sword skills are so high. Your sky-burning blood is really pure. I've seen many outstanding talents, but none of them can compare to you. It seems like your position in the Lu family isn't low. Why did you sneak into the 9 Extreme Death Jail? What is there in the jail to attract such a talent like you? Zhongsho shook his head. His matter had nothing to do with this person, so why bother talking to him? Since he was in the nether jail, he didn't want to waste a single moment. Following this, the middle-aged man laughed. With your strength, you are at least one of the princes of the Liu family. If you want to enter the jail, you could do it openly. The sky-burning Saint Dynasty won't stop you. Why do you need to ask Wu Yazi? Oh, right. You're the son of Liu Hanyin, and you came to find your mother, right? She was truly out of the ordinary. She had only been playing for over 20 years. Hanyin probably wouldn't have thought that in just 20 years, her son would have the ability to enter the 8th level to find her. Zhong Shou looked at him in astonishment. The middle-aged man smiled and shook his head. I know your mother and we have some relations, but we're not close. I don't know the whereabouts of Princess Hanyin. However, if you are willing to help me, I can make a hard oath. I will help you until this death jail matter ends. Zhong Shou raised his eyebrows. Judging by the way this person spoke, he was much more trustworthy than Wu Yazi. However, after thinking about it for a moment, he shook his head. Junior still needs time to think about it. When the middle-aged man heard this, he understood that this sentence was a tactful rejection. He didn't say anything else. Instead, he sighed and closed his eyes again. Zhong Shou didn't pay much attention to it. He used void evasion and left. In just a moment, he was dozens of miles away. He continued to spread out his divine perception to search the area. Along the way, they also discovered quite a few things that looked like crosses. However, the Liu family's restrictions weren't set in stone. Crosses weren't commonly seen. Those who locked them up were often God Realm cultivators. There were just over 100 of them, and they were spread all over the place. There were also many other stone platforms like the previous few levels. Some were suppressed by iron towers, and some were simply metal cages trapping people inside. Although these people weren't God Realm, their true essence and vital energy were being sucked out. Most of them were in pain, much more strenuous than those God Realm cultivators. Most of them had one foot in the grave and couldn't hold on for much longer. There were even some who didn't have any protection at all. They were just tossed here and treated as food for those natural variants. The more he saw, the more cold Zhong Shou felt, and the more anxious he became. He didn't care about the consumption of true essence, using the instant space dragon pellet to travel around the death jail and search tirelessly. From south to north, from east to west, he didn't let go of any inch. However, when 14 days passed, Zhong Shou was in despair. Why can't I find her? I've already searched this 30,000-kilometer area twice. I didn't miss out on any inch of land, even the underground. Was it really, as Wu Yazi said, that mother was sent to the 9th layer? Zhong Shou was at a loss as he looked at his sleeves where there were dozens of mutated beast pellets. They were his gains from this layer of the death jail. He had gone through dozens of dangerous battles. There were even a few times when he was nearly surrounded by natural variants. The natural variants above God Realm were no different from humans. Although they were still controlled by the vengeful energy, they knew how to work with other beasts. This was why, although these natural variants weren't as strong as him. However, they nearly caused Zhong Shou to die. He had used all of his strength to barely escape from the calamity. These mutated beast pellets were Zhong Shou's gains. There were only a few that Hanshi could use. However, these beast pellets above God Realm could merge into the soul ocean void space like the instant space dragon pellet and become one of the star Dao seeds. If this was in the past, Zhong Shou would be delighted to have such gains. However, at this moment, he was feeling really down and his chest was really cold. Also, as the days went on, it acted up more and more frequently and the pain increased. It caused him to be really dizzy and distracted as he walked in the void. When he came back to his senses, he was already standing at the center of the nether jail. Unknowingly, he had already walked here. There was a black mist in front of him. Not only was he unable to see, but even the illusionary heart mirror couldn't shine through. Thick space, spiritual energy surged in the mist. Apart from that, he could also sense a strong aura within it. Samuraim's light retracted. He had come to this place dozens of times during these dozens of days. He guessed that it was most probably the abyss gate of the ninth layer that he hadn't entered. With his mind in a blur, he most probably instinctively headed here. Then, Zhongsho broke out into a laugh, thinking that it seemed like he had to make a trip to the ninth layer in the end. The moment he made up his mind, Zhongsho sat cross-legged 100 miles away from the black mist without being arrogant or rash. During these dozens of days, he didn't care about the consumption of energy and went through dozens of tough battles. It caused his source to be really weak. To try to enter the ninth layer and fight with the person in the black mist, he had to recover to his best state. He swallowed a few spiritual pills, bearing with the bone-deep pain, closing his eyes and adjusting his breathing. A full 24 hours later, Zhongsho woke up. Once again, he used the illusionary heart mirror to replace his eyes. He suddenly felt something and controlled the illusionary heart mirror to look to the side. A few thousand feet away, there was a woman around 30 with white hair covering her face. It was tied to a huge tree by vines as thick as a child's arm. Hundreds of crimson hummingbirds flew over and landed on the woman's body. They used their beaks to peck. Each peck could tear off a piece of flesh. Chapter 9:29. The woman couldn't fight back at all, allowing these finger-sized red hummingbirds to peck her body. She was trapped by the wooden vines and couldn't move at all. Her heart was really calm, and there were no fluctuations in her soul. Zhongsho was startled when he saw this. Before he entered a meditative state, his eyes were only focused on that 100-mile black mist. He didn't notice the woman who was inches away from him. If it wasn't for the red hummingbirds flying over and waking him up, he probably wouldn't have noticed her even when he left. Seeing that the woman was covered in injuries, he couldn't help but laugh. Zhongsho frowned and waved his sleeves. Hundreds of sword energy instantly exploded out, causing those red hummingbirds to fall. In the distance, there were more red hummingbirds who rushed over. They were all shocked by Zhongsho's sharp sword intent. All of them screamed out and fled. At this moment, the woman finally raised her head in shock. Her white hair moved without wind and was tied behind her head. She looked at Zhongsho and her eyes were filled with confusion. Then she smiled. "Thank you, little brother. These birds are really annoying and I have no way to deal with them. Thanks to you, I can finally have a peaceful day today." Zhongsho was stunned once more, only feeling that although this girl was middle-aged, she was still young. Although she was middle-aged, be it her looks or aura, she was a top pick. She was also a little familiar, like she was similar to someone in his memory. However, he couldn't recall who it was. The sky-burning Liu family had an intense power struggle, and they often conquered many worlds. However, there were very few good people in this 9 extreme death jail. However, for some reason, Zhongsho felt close to the girl in front of him, like they were connected by blood. Since he noticed her, he didn't have any wary thoughts. Was it? A thought flashed in his mind like a spark. However, it instantly disappeared. Thinking back, he couldn't recall anything. Zhongsho was stunned for a moment before his eyes regained focus. Thinking about it, numerous sword lights shone around Zhongsho's body and charged in all directions. 37 Dao exterminating dragon tooth swords formed a sword formation in a thousandth of a second. Strands of sharp sword energy swept out and killed the crimson hummingbirds one by one. For some reason, he wanted to do something for the woman in front of him. For some reason, he hated these red hummingbirds to the core. Since she said that this group of evil creatures was annoying, then he would kill them all on her behalf. Seeing this, the woman couldn't help but show a grateful expression. "Many thanks, but little brother shouldn't waste your energy. These scarlet hummingbirds were raised here by someone who wanted to make things difficult for me. Even if you kill them all, there will definitely be more after a day or two. Not only will you not be able to help me, but you will also make that person angry at you." Zhongsho frowned. Zhongsho was never afraid of venting his anger on others. However, after thinking about it carefully, he still withdrew the sword formation. Before finding Lu Hanyin, he really didn't want to create unnecessary trouble. However, he felt that he had let this woman down, and his gaze wandered. The giant tree in front of him wasn't naturally born. Its roots were connected to the restrictions of the death jail. There were all sorts of weird items used to restrain the Liu family sinners. Zhongsho had seen many of them, and he wasn't surprised. However, when he looked at the woman, the ends of her white hair actually pierced into the tree trunk. Zhongsho's eyes were filled with praise. "You're using this tree to cultivate?" "That's right." The woman smiled. "My essence blood is sucked out every day. If I don't get some back to compensate myself, I would have turned into a skeleton in this jail. Moreover, I have unfulfilled wishes. If I don't cultivate to increase my lifespan, I won't be able to see my husband and son." A weird expression appeared in her eyes. She didn't know why she was saying such things to Zhongsho. Maybe she had been lonely for too long, and this teen in front of her felt too close to her. As he spoke, the white hair that was more than 3 feet long appeared. In the blink of an eye, all of them turned from pale white to black. The woman's ashen white face regained its rosiness, and she became more and more beautiful. The wounds caused by the red hummingbirds instantly recovered, and she was filled with life. Life and death withering technique. Zhongsho was shocked. With just one look, he knew the technique that the woman used. The only difference was that this woman used another method, using the tree to reverse the withering. She hid her own life force into the giant tree. When she needed it, she would draw it back. She also used the 3,000 strands of hair to snatch vital energy and essence energy from the restrictions. He felt weird. He remembered that this technique was a product of the cloud world and was a secret technique of the Dowling sect. How did this woman know how to use it? "You recognize it?" The woman exclaimed and then nodded. "That's right. Someone like you must be really knowledgeable. It isn't surprising that you have been to the cloud world." She reminded, "I don't know why you are here, but looking at the situation, you are heading to the 9th layer. I think you shouldn't force your way in. Remember that the 8th layer is a formless god demon that the Liu family, Yinyuan Saint Venerable caught. He set the 10,000-year slave contract and suppressed it here. It was said that at that time, the demon was just a step away from the saint realm." When he heard the words formless god demon, Zhongsho felt that it was familiar. Even when she mentioned saint realm, he didn't pay much attention to it. Taking in a deep breath, Samuraim's eyes lit up. As expected, there were memories in his mind. However, they came from the 9-tailed sky fox bloodline. Formless god demon, is that shadow god? No. Is it the shadow demon race? That's right. Anyone from the shadow god race who reaches god realm would be formless and hard to track. The woman answered curiously as she looked at Zhongsho. Her face was filled with joy that she couldn't suppress. Zhongsho was indeed surprised and felt his heart relax. If it was any other peak god realm, he would definitely die. However, he didn't fear the shadow demon race, even if it was a true saint realm. The thousands of ancestors of the sky fox race sacrificed themselves to craft a god artifact to defend against the shadow demons during the cloud desolate era. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were their nemesis, especially when they were wary. Speaking of which, if it was really as the woman said, then he had a 90% chance of entering the 9th layer. Even if he couldn't defeat the enemy, he should be able to protect himself. He felt grateful. Zhongsho looked at the wooden vines, his heart filled with unwillingness. After hesitating slightly, he said resolutely, "With my sword technique, I should be able to slash open the restrictions. Do you need me to save you?" Dozens of days ago, Zhongsho didn't even consider the peak God Realm expert. However, towards this woman, Zhongsho instinctively didn't want her to be tortured. The woman was slightly surprised and then shook her head. "The Liu family laws have their own rules. Because I made a mistake, I was locked up in the 6th layer for 2,000 years. However, if I was in the 8th layer, it would be reduced to 40 years. If I break out now, it would be much easier, but all my efforts would be wasted." She said, "Little brother, you are a good person, but you don't have to worry about me. No matter what, I will hold on until the end of my sentence. My life goal is to see my kid. Why would I care about a mere forbidden technique here?" Zhongsho was in a daze and asked, "Can I know Senior's name?" The woman smiled. You don't have to call me senior. Actually, I am not that old. Just call me Lu Hanyan. Chapter 9:31. Zhong Shou was in a daze and continued to ask, "Can Junior know Senior's name?" The girl smiled. "You don't have to call me Senior. I'm actually not that old. Just call me Lu Hanyan." Lu Hanyan? Zhong Shou only felt his soul explode, like thunder rumbling. However, he was confused and thought about who Lu Hanyan was. Did he know her? His mind was in a daze for a moment before he came back to his senses. No, this was seeing and knowing. The moment such a thought rose up, it disappeared back into his heart lake without a single ripple. He thought about what the girl was saying and what her name was. Why couldn't he remember it? Was it because of the prison restriction technique and the eye that affected his vision? Or was there something missing in his memory? At this moment, he was too embarrassed to ask anymore. Zhong Shou could only nod his head. "I understand." Looking into his body, he felt that his meridians were flowing in the opposite direction and his blood was flowing in reverse. Luckily, his true chi and soul power had recovered to their peak. After a day of recuperation, his essence chi had mostly recovered. He was originally planning to rest here for a while. However, since the Abyss Gate was guarded by a formless god demon, then there was no need for that. He didn't recognize this girl and didn't know about her past. However, he instinctively believed what she said. Taking in a deep breath, Zhong Shou was prepared to step into the black mist. The girl persuaded, "Little brother, that formless god demon is vicious and cruel. I have been here for 20 years and have seen a few people who entered, but they all ended up in a tragic state. Your cultivation is slightly weak, and if you enter, your life will be in danger. Can you not go?" Zhong Shaoxin felt warmth in his heart, and then he shook his head. Just like how this girl wasn't willing to escape from the restrictions, he had a reason to forcefully charge into the 9th layer of the death jail. Without saying anything more, Zhong Shou's body flashed, and he was 10 miles away. In front of the black mist, he hesitated for a moment before walking in. The aura within the mist became colder and colder. Not only was the death energy here so thick that it was close to physical form. Within the mist, there was a power that could bewitch one's mind. If one looked at it with their eyes, they would definitely see illusions. However, Zhong Shou was currently using the illusionary heart mirror and wasn't affected by the illusionary power. Even if he spread out his divine sense, there would still be mistakes. Under the illumination of the clear and cold mirror light, everything in this place had nowhere to hide. Walking towards the center of the fog, Zhong Shou had just taken a few steps when he heard a burst of laughter. His voice was mournful and strange, shaking his eardrums. Just as Zhong Shou was on high alert, he saw a beam of sword light suddenly slash down from afar. His aura was vast and majestic. It was as if a giant mountain was pressing down, and it was impossible to resist. God Realm Peak? Zhong Shou subconsciously wanted to dodge the attack. However, he immediately bit the tip of his tongue and advanced instead of retreating. His body flashed, and the nameless sword in his hand pierced forwards. If he couldn't withstand the sword, then he would die. Along with a series of sword light and weapon energy clashing, there was a loud sound. Zhong Shou's body instantly flew back 200 feet. He waved his hand, and the one origin soul sword left his soul ocean and appeared beside him. Using the 9 long Ing swords returned to one true art. In a breath, he slashed out hundreds of swords. It blocked all the energy and spells that were chasing over from 100 feet away. The 37 Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth swords were spread out 100 feet away. The sword formation was formed, and the entire 10,000 feet of land was instantly filled with sword energy. At this moment, Zhong Shou finally saw the situation in front of him clearly. It was a dozen or so cultivators with numb expressions. They were currently surrounding him. Apart from their eyes being stunned, they were no different from God Realm cultivators. Zhong Shou didn't panic. Instead, his eyes were filled with a cold and disdainful intent. This should be the shadow puppet. The shadow demon destroyed its mind and soul, controlling it and turning it into a puppet. However, such a puppet with no mind was unable to use the Tao laws it grasped when it was alive. Rather than God realm, it was better to say that it was a celestial realm cultivator with stronger, true chi. This was why, although there were dozens of them, in his eyes, they weren't worth mentioning. What he cared about was where the sword light came from. That sword wasn't as strong as what he saw. Everything was just an illusion. The formless god-demon could influence his thoughts and make him think that way. However, when they truly clashed, the difference couldn't be hidden from others. Actually, the illusionary heart mirror had reflected the truth of everything into his sea of consciousness. However, the formless god-demon went around it and directly attacked his soul. Maybe it knew that his mind was firm and normal methods wouldn't be able to shake it. Thus, the shadow demon had used its laughter to make him wary, creating an opportunity for him to take advantage of. Then, it directly entered his mind to create the illusion of that shocking sword. Just now, he only needed to instinctively dodge, and he would have fallen into the trap that the formless god-demon had set up. However, at this moment, although he had removed the God Realm Shadow Demon's methods, he didn't feel relaxed at all. However, he did not relax in the slightest. Instead, he became even more cautious. This Shadow Demon not only had amazing abilities, but its methods were also really good. It entered every hole and was tough to defend against. In the next instance, he saw a teen with a red mole at the center of his brows walk over from a mist. He looked at Zhongsho and then at the green mirror in confusion. Only then did he say with a weird expression, "It is the aura of the sky burning blood. You are the Liu family young master, or the Saint Dynasty princes? Why are you here? I have an agreement with your Liu family people that I can't hurt your Liu family pure blood people." Zhongsho frowned. Due to his bloodline, no matter where he went, everyone would link him to the Liu family. Although his name was in the Liu family direct bloodline register, he didn't like it. He especially hated the words, young master crown prince. Shaking his head, Zhongsho retracted his thoughts. "I want to enter the 9th layer. Are you willing to move aside?" The formless god demon didn't have a body, and this shadow demon was using the body of a puppet to talk to him. His combat strength only dropped by half a grade. Just now when they clashed, his sword technique was much better than his. Although he didn't fear this person, if he could, it was best if he didn't fight. After all, using the ability of the illusionary heart mirror to suppress the God Realm Shadow Demon would consume lifespan. The formless god demon smiled. "Do you have a Saint Dynasty token? If you do, please take it out. I won't stop you." Zhongsho frowned, and the formless god demon understood. His expression turned dark and a cold intent flashed in his eyes. "No token, that makes things a little tough for me," the formless god demon said, and then gave out a weird smile. "You go to the 9th layer to search for Lu Hanyan? Is she your mother? However, I remember that in these 20 years, there was no one who threw her into the 9th layer. There is no girl, and no one named Lu Hanyan." Zhongsho was shocked. This formless god demon was able to peer into his thoughts. Then his body shook. Chapter 932. Knowledge Barrier, Mother and Son Meeting, but not being able to recognize each other. Saint Venerable's methods are really something that normal people can't compare to. What a surprise. The praises came from the water vapor in the sky. This was the 8th layer of Nether Jail, 30,000 feet above the ground. The two of them stood there, but there was no trace of them. Everything below could be seen in his eyes. Lu Tianqing thought to himself, not being able to know or recognize them when they meet is far crueler than not being able to let the mother and son meet. If in the future these two had a chance to break through this knowledge barrier, who knows how much pain and regret they would feel. He didn't show it on his face. Instead, a joyful expression appeared on his face. "Junior hasn't congratulated Saint Venerable. It seems like your cultivation has improved greatly." "My cultivation has only improved a little. In terms of knowledge, I am far from the Buddhist faction." Lu Jian smiled. His expression was indiscernible as he asked, Did you do those red hummingbirds? I remember that there wasn't such a clause in the punishment. Saint Venerable. Lu Tianqing's expression instantly changed as he looked towards Lu Juyan with a weird expression. All of a sudden, he didn't understand and felt a chill down his spine. During these 17 days, Lu Juyan had been here, excitedly observing everything that Zhongshou did. The red hummingbird matter should have been noticed by this Saint Venerable. Why didn't he care before, but ask now? His tone was like he was asking for someone to take responsibility. Thinking about it for a moment, Lu Tianqing replied carefully, Lu Yunj did it. Before Hanyan's matter, Yunj was her fiancé. Apart from that matter, Yunj naturally hated her to the bone. Actually, it was no wonder that he would do that. I heard that 20 years ago, Yunj loved her deeply. As they say, the deeper you love, the more you hate. It is also because of this great humiliation that Yun Ge was able to bravely advance in the past 20 years, and is now the second person among the Holy Hall's princes. Yunj. Juyan's brow rose up. A look of understanding appeared in his eyes. To maintain the bloodline of the sky-burning Lu family, it was normal for people of the same race to marry each other, especially people like Lu Hanyan who couldn't marry outsiders. Usually, it was the elders who chose the elite disciples from the same clan. He had heard of Lu Yunj's name several decades ago. Who knew that this kid could actually reach such a high level? Among the dozens of crown princes of the Lu clan, he was ranked second. Not only must their cultivation base and bloodline be superior to those of the same race, he should have a considerable amount of power, and he would need at least 2 country rulers to back him up. Lu Tianqing's words were, firstly, to defend Lu Yunj, secondly, to enlighten him, and thirdly, to exonerate himself. Lu Jian laughed and acted like he didn't hear those words. However, the warden of the death jail is still you, Lu Tianqing. He wanted to use this method to torture Han Yan, and you agreed, just like that? Or this kind of scarlet hummingbird? The scarlet-bladed bird didn't eat much, but saliva was poisonous, which could increase a person's pain tenfold or even 100-fold. The Lu family often used the saliva of the scarlet hummingbird to torture prisoners, but it was usually diluted. Lu Tianqing was drenched in cold sweat. He could not understand what Lu Jian meant by those words. Could it be that this Saint Venerable was actually on Lu Hanyan's side? That shouldn't be the case. If he really couldn't stand it 20 years ago, he wouldn't have helped them. Then, he didn't ask about Lu Hanyan's matter. He kept silent, thinking about it for a moment before he opened his mouth once more. I was wrong, I shouldn't have done that. After this, I will head to the punishment hall to receive my punishment. In the future, such a thing won't happen again. It is good that you are willing to admit your mistake. As for punishment, there is no rush. Actually, there's no need to talk about the future. Lu Jian shook his head, smiling as he sized up the red-robed old man beside him. You're injured? Was it done by Zhong Weiran 3 years ago? Are you in any way? Lu Tianqing was startled, green veins popping out on his arms. His face was expressionless. It is just a small injury, not worth mentioning. Thank you, Saint Venerable, for your concern. Although Zhong Weiran was forced back by him, he saw it as a huge humiliation. A middle-stage God Realm cultivator was able to injure Lu Tianqing and leave. Moreover, his injuries hadn't healed in 3 years. When Lu Jian heard this, his smile became even brighter. That is good. I remember that there's a Kangwu Saint tree under the Lu family rule. It blooms once every 2,000 years and bears fruit once every 2,000 years. Its fruit can increase one's lifespan by 100 years. You can head to that world and bring back 10 Kangwu Saint fruits. Remember, you have to do it within 10 days. You can't delay. His tone and tone were unquestionable. Lu Tianqing was startled once more. Naturally, he knew about the name of the Kangwu Saint tree. It was the top treasure of the Lu family Saint dynasty and was even one of the foundations of the sky-burning Lu family. Every 4 years, it would only produce 72 fruits, which were distributed within the family. Even a Saint realm person like him couldn't casually get it. However, why did Lu Jian want it? Moreover, 10 at a time? End realm Saint Venerables could live forever. These things that could increase lifespan were meaningless to him. Just as he was hesitating and wanted to ask, he saw Lu Juyan's cold gaze staring over. He didn't dare to hesitate, replying before leaving with a suspicious heart. His brow was tightly furrowed. What happened today felt really weird. Julian's words totally confused everyone, and they could not understand what he meant. At the start, it seemed like he wanted to condemn him, but then he let him off. In the end, he ordered him to get the Kangwu Saint fruit. Was he going to give it to Lu Hanyan? 10 Saint fruits could increase one's lifespan by 400 years. He then shook his head and chased such thoughts away. Saint Venerables were supreme beings, but such things that could greatly increase lifespan couldn't be used as one wished. If one wanted to use it, one had to give an explanation to the people who were about to die. Lu Hanyan was already despised by the entire Lu family. Even Yin Yuan's Saint Venerable, who doted on her, didn't do that. Much less extreme, flame, Saint Venerable. As for today, based on what he knew, this Saint Venerable's temper was really unpredictable. When he was young, he did many preposterous things. His actions today weren't weird, or maybe he was just being suspicious. Even if he knew that it wasn't appropriate, he couldn't reject it. Who knew that right after he left, a red flame suddenly lit up beside Julian. First, the faint shape of a phoenix appeared. Then, a young girl wearing a luxurious red feather dress walked out of the flames. Her brow was filled with mocking intent. Venerable Tianqing, are you really going to give up just like that? Although this person thinks too much, he has done many things for you. Scheming and scheming, thinking too much. Lu Jian was expressionless as he looked at the black mist below. It can't be considered giving up. In the past, I didn't treat him badly when he did things for me. Now that I need him to suffer some grievances, I don't think he will have any complaints. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.